Hello, everyone, and many thanks for joining today's stream, big community chat, and the fundraising stream, traditional for Sundays. And first of all, I hope let me just wish you a good weekend. Hopefully, you had a great Saturday and Sunday. And as always, dear friends, these community chats, as it is the case, will be more casual than usual. My updates. Although I have prepared, of course, news segment for you. There is a lot of news, but after news segment, I will join chat. And if there will be super chat from Rumble channel, of course, I will react on it. If there will be any questions or the comments through other supporter platforms, PayPal, Boosty, I will react on that too. And time to time, I will give you some updates how we are doing in regards to fundraising. Usually for new members of community, I will say usually this Sunday fundraising streams, task is to reach $200 so that next week I will be less, stressful if there is no donations during the week. This week, for example, was quite weak in terms of donations, but hopefully today's fundraising will help with that. And towards the end of the stream, I give you final numbers. And also, in case you have a question or comment that you want us to discuss during the stream after news segment, please use capital letters in your question or the comment, or at least capital Q, so that I will spot it a little easier. And so, that's been said, dear friends, let's start today's live stream. And as I said, quite a lot of news that I have to share first for a news segment. And the first report is from TASS News Agency about work of Russian air defense systems overnight. Information is based on Defense Ministry's latest update. And according to reports, overall 44 drones were intercepted by air defense systems on duty past night. 44 drones that was launched by Kyiv regime with assistance of NATO to strike deep into Russian territory. Mainly, this attack was concentrated on the Bryansk region, and 43 drones from these 44 were intercepted exactly there in Bryansk region, and one drone was intercepted in Rostov region. Of course, Russian militaries are conducting retaliatory strikes too on military and logistical energy infrastructure of Kyiv regime, and according to quite a number of sources, following the recent Russian strike on the military logistics and energy infrastructure of the Western-backed terrorist regime of Zelensky, large-scale power outages have been reported in all major cities in the so-called Ukraine, including Kyiv, by the way. We had reports that all thermal power plants were switched off from the grid. Some of them were damaged as a result of Russian long-range precise strikes. Other ones were turned off from the grid, probably to avoid being hit by Russian drones and their missiles. Maybe that was a calculus. But according to reports, all thermal power plants are off the grid now, and also a significant number of hydro power plants experiencing the same. And I can give you now a short video of Kyiv, dear friends, last night, how it looked. And I would not say it's complete blackout. You can see some lights in some buildings, but it's blackout nevertheless. Just take a look. This is Kyiv, by the way. Big city, and it's almost completely dark. Almost. Right? There are few exceptions. Some people have small electro generators, right, that are putting on a balcony and using it. There is one district in Kyiv in this video that seems like has more or less power supply, but that's what is happening, by the way. It's not just Kyiv, as I said. All the major cities, including Kharkiv, by the way, second biggest city, temporarily controlled by NATO, let's say, also experiencing significant power outages. Metro or subway or underground, in different countries there is different names for this transport system. Metro is not working. Electric transport is not working. Trams, trolleys, and so on. So significant development in this regard. If you remember, just about a month ago, Zelensky was threatening Russia and Moscow, to be more precise, with their massive blackouts, and well, he should keep his mouth shut, because his words did not go down well, I guess, with the Russian leadership, and I guess Kremlin made decision to show the Kiev regime what Russia actually can do, and was not doing for the past several years, for most likely, most definitely humanitarian reasons. But well, because collective Western ruling class is not inclined to de-escalate, exactly opposite is happening, I guess. Political decision was made to actually, little bit at least, untie the hands of Russian militaries, and we are seeing consequences of that already. And for a reason, I said in my previous updates on at least several occasions that probably will be a great decision on part of residents of Kiev-controlled territory, especially in the big cities, to move to Europe for a little while, right? At least for a winter period, so that they will avoid potential trouble that might be caused with the constant power outages, right? And I'm saying cities, first of all, because you can imagine how difficult it must be to stay in a city if you are living, for example, on a 10th floor or 15th floor, right? When there is no electricity, there is no lifts, right? Almost nothing is working. So it is very difficult. So to avoid these troubles, from humanitarian standpoint, everyone should recommend the residents of Kiev-controlled territory, if they can, to allocate for a little while in European countries. They should do that. And if they have opportunity to then from Europe travel somehow to Russia, if they never committed no crimes against humanity, they can come to Russia, by the way. According to reports, 5 to 7 million residents of this former Soviet Republic, Ukraine, are living here in Russia, by the way, happily, right? And many more can for sure join, right? Also, dear friends, when it comes to these Russian strikes on energy facilities of Kiev regime, which is understandable, it's a strategical area that are used by Russian enemies for military purposes, and therefore energy facilities are legit target. And the Kiev regime began speculating now that Russian missiles targeted Ukraine's nuclear infrastructure too. And this was reported by Financial Times also, by the way, Western media outlet. So citing sources, their paper claimed that the November 8th strike hit substations supporting the Khmelnytsky and Rovno nuclear power plants. Not power plants themselves, but substations through which electricity generated by nuclear power plant is entering the grid, right? There is a big difference. Kiev regime is targeting Russian nuclear power plants directly, actually power plants, right? And also energy infrastructure that supplies power plants with electricity, which is absolutely essential for security installations, including cooling stations, right? But in this report, Financial Times did not say that Russia targeted nuclear power plants or power lines that are supporting this Rovno and Khmelnytsky nuclear power plants with electricity, but substations that are allowing those nuclear power plants to supply electricity to a grid in general. So Ukraine's foreign minister, Sibiga, called for an emergency IAEA meeting, which is so ironic, isn't it? Kiev regime on regular basis targeting Russian nuclear power plants in Kursk, in Zaporozhye nuclear power plant is constantly under attacks. And just now, by the way, just in past several days, recently, basically, it has become possible to restore outside power supply to their ZMPP, right? because their power lines were damaged as a result of direct strikes by Kiev regime, which was actually threatening nuclear safety, because yet again, outside power supply is used for essential infrastructure of their nuclear power plants, including cooling stations, right? And according to reports that I see, now work is done to put in operation second line of outside power supplies, right, for Zaporozhye nuclear power plant. But Kiev regime that are directly targeting nuclear power plants is calling for emergency meeting of IEA, which is crazy, right? And the Kiev regime is also demanding from China and India to put pressure on Russia. I don't know if Kiev regime is in a position to demand anything from China or India, but nevertheless, strikes on nuclear plants, substations pose a greatest risk to Ukraine's energy grid, as energy grid, by the way, not nuclear stations themselves, energy grid, as nuclear stations provide most of their country's power. If those substations are disabled, according to Kiev regime's statements, for a long period, then reactors would have to be shut down, leading to massive power deficit that neither thermal plants or hydroelectric power plants nor the European imports could cover. In that case, nationwide blackout would become a real possibility, and therefore, I would not be surprised at all if Russian side will continue to target the substations through which nuclear power plants are transferring electricity to grid all over their country, because yet again, the Kiev regime still has some elements of military-industrial complex that needs electricity, obviously, and of course, and the railway still uses electricity, and the railway is used to deploy military equipment or manpower, and therefore I would not be surprised at all if Russian militaries will continue to target energy sector of the Kiev regime while ensuring that nuclear power plants themselves are safe and secure. And yet again, Kiev regime should shut down those nuclear reactors right now. They should begin implementing cold shutdown on those reactors right now, because they will have to do it anyways, right? I think so, and this is understandable. Russia, yet again, was very patient in many regards for past several years, and this restrained attitude of Russia clearly was interpreted by the Russian Western enemies as a weakness. And I guess Moscow is kind of fed up with all this situation, and potentially, this is my interpretation, potentially Kremlin made a political decision to at least a little bit untie the hands of Russian militaries and security services to basically dealt a significant blow to confidence, first of all, of globalists and their puppet regimes all over the West and their proxy Kiev regime. Yet again, from humanitarian standpoint, I will recommend residents of Kiev-controlled territory, especially in the cities, to move for a little while, for winter time at least, to Europe. European states are directly guilty in everything that is happening with their Kiev regime, on the Kiev-controlled territory, and the European states should provide potential millions and millions of additional refugees from Ukraine with everything necessary, because it's European states that are guilty in what is happening now there, right? Together with the US and other countries from their collective West. So they should pay the price, right? One way or another. And maybe soon we will see actually hundreds of thousands, potentially millions of people beginning to move towards the Europe from Kiev-controlled territory. And I can understand that the European societies may not be very happy about it, but yet again, did they do anything to stop the crazies in their governments? They didn't, right? So, every action, comes with a reaction, right? And the consequences. That's how it is and will be always. RIA Novosti, meanwhile, is reporting that, well, this extremely emboldened by Russian restraint policies, in past at least, extremely emboldened globalists and their allies, neocons, and all the regimes that they control over the West, now openly discussing possibilities of deploying 800,000 troops to Russian border and preparations for such capabilities to be implemented on the ground. And this information, I think, worth our attention, especially if we keep in mind that Russian Foreign Intelligence Service just a couple of weeks ago reported that French militaries already created expeditionary corps under the orders of President of France, Macron, expeditionary corps of at least several thousand troops from French Foreign Legion to get engaged directly in a conflict with Russia, to be deployed on a Q-controlled territory, that is. And according to Russian Foreign Intelligence Service, forward units of that expeditionary corps were already deployed close to borders with the Western Ukraine in Poland. So if those troops were deployed in Poland, there is a high probability that some of the units, avant-garde of that corps, probably already is deployed on a Q-controlled territory. And also, day before yesterday, that was, I believe, or yes, day before yesterday, I reported about article in Telegraph that said that British Army is ready to get engaged directly in a war with Russia. Statement that you, at least to nowadays, you didn't really hear that often from the West, but now, as you can see, France is demonstrating its willingness to get engaged directly, openly in military hostilities with Russia, and UK does the same, right? And if we keep in mind that development, then this report about potential deployment of 800,000 troops is definitely something to keep our eyes on. And let me give you some details on this information, dear friends. Germany could become the NATO alliance's central base in the event of a conflict with Russia. Lieutenant General Alexander Schollerank, head of NATO's Joint Support and Enabling Command, stated at the Bundeswehr conference, according to the German newspaper Der Welt. And we have quotes here: in the event of conflict, Germany will become NATO's central strong area, major stronghold, let's say. In the shortest possible time, up to 800 troops and their equipment from various NATO countries could be deployed through Germany to their eastern flank, he said. According to Zollfrank, NATO understands that if deployment of their alliance forces stalls, arrives too late, or is uncoordinated, then deterrence of Russia will fail. And they are talking about this situation as if NATO is already openly engaged in a war with Russia, isn't it? And this information is also relevant, especially if we keep in mind that on 19th of November, I believe, EU member states gonna discuss this military Schengen. They call it military Schengen. They want to implement a policy which will allow troops from all over the European NATO member states to move freely through the territory of alliance, right? And if you notice, dear friends, EU is more and more resembles NATO itself, right? In some sense, EU is become even more militaristic than NATO. And last time I checked, originally EU was an economical alliance, right? EU was a union to enhance economical cooperation between the countries, not their military. But, well, things are changing. Things are changing rapidly, right? Also, dear friends, RIA Novosti is reporting that earlier, Welt, another Western media outlet, reported that Friedrich Merz at their Bundeswehr conference called for the radical change in mentality and accelerated piece of strengthening Germany's defense capabilities and hysteria in Europe over their alleged Russian threat. He clarified that increasing Bundeswehr's combat capability requires soldiers, not tanks and planes, and therefore new conscription law should be a key element. And soon, dear friends, many European countries definitely gonna go ahead with their mandatory conscriptions. Already, legislation in many EU member states or European NATO member states is being created, right, and will be adopted for sure. And simultaneously, we should expect a massive wave of propaganda all over Europe to brainwash young generation, so much so that they will decide to join military, because seems like, based on reports that I see on internet, young generations of Europeans don't really want to have anything to do with the military whatsoever, and they definitely don't want to become a tool, or they don't want to become sort of a private military company stuff for European oligarchy, right? So that's why mandatory subscription is coming all over the Europe. Also, last Thursday, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, speaking at the Defense Industrial Forum in Romania, called on allies for a long-term confrontation and called Russia destabilizing force in Europe and the world. It's ironic when someone from the West calls some other country factor of the destabilization, but okay, we get used to this inadequacy from the Western so-called elites, isn't it? And also in recent years, Russia has been decrying unprecedented NATO activity along its western borders. The alliance is expanding its initiatives and calling it a deterrence of the Russian aggression. Russia did not take no steps against NATO. Last time I checked, we did not do nothing against NATO, right? So this language already is inappropriate, right? What Russian aggression? What exactly? But unfortunately, Western elites not being challenged by Western societies in large, right? And therefore, they are using any wording they wish, especially in their attempt to brainwash more and more people and zombify more and more people. Russian authorities have repeatedly expressed concerns about the bloc's military political buildup in Europe. The Kremlin has stated that Moscow poses no threat to anyone, but will not ignore actions that are potentially dangerous to its interests. And yes, I mean, I said earlier that due to Russian restraint policies, maybe in some ways, which was understandable, by the way, for many, which was controversial for others, but nevertheless, that was the policy that was chosen by Russian leadership. And so there is an argument that can be made that this restraint policy of Moscow actually invited more trouble upon Russians, right, on Russia, because Western elites, they don't understand language of diplomacy. They did not interpret the Russian restraint as a indicator that Moscow don't wants to go to be hostile relationships with the West. No, Western elites interpreted the Russian restraint policies as a weakness. And just take a look at the history of last 3-4 years, dear friends. Due to this restraint, or for whatever reason, but Western elites are escalating constantly. There was not a single step from the West towards the escalation, right? Not a single step. That's how it is. That's how it is. And now they are openly discussing deploying 800,000 troops. You might ask from where these troops going to come from, right? And well, formally, by the way, at least on the paper, NATO has like 3-4 million troops, man. You know, we can laugh at the battle capabilities of NATO troops, even US troops, but they do have millions of troops, right? US has 1.5 million at least. Poland has like 200,000-300,000 troops at least, maybe 400,000. France and UK combined probably do have 200,000 300,000 troops together. There is a Spain, there is other countries, Italy, right? So they can actually pull off this number, 800,000, if they want to. Different question is, even if Europe actually declared war on Russia and engaged in open hostilities, will these 800,000 troops turn the tide? And answer is no. And these 800,000 troops will definitely delay final resolution, which is an unconditional victory of the Russian Federation, and eventually globalists and their allies will for sure capitulate. But West cannot do anything really to turn the tide. They lost this proxy war already that they started against Russia, not in 2022, but in 2014, when they orchestrated bloody coup d'etat in Kiev, removed their democratically elected government, and implemented in power their Nazi proxies, right? So yes, there can be two questions. Can Europe actually manage to deploy 800,000 troops? Answer is yes. But can Europe turn the tide with such a potential deployment? Answer is no. They cannot turn the tide. And these 800,000 troops will delay capitulation of Western elites maybe for another year or something like that, and that's about it. Russian militaries will take care of these 800,000 NATO troops in matter of year max, year and a half maybe, right? Maybe even sooner than that, because I don't think European societies actually are ready to receive tens of thousands of their militaries in the body bags, man. I don't think European societies psychologically are ready for that. And as I already said, dear friends, there was in the Guardian, not in the Telegraph, but in the Guardian, there was an article earlier that British Army is ready, allegedly, to participate directly in an armed conflict in Ukraine. You might have some doubts about capabilities of British Army, as I do, by the way. I don't think British Army is anything serious. Only reason why we should pay attention to British military is nuclear weapons, basically. UK has 4 nuclear-capable submarines, Vanguard-class submarines, right? And that's the only reason why we might take British Army more or less seriously. When it comes to their ground forces, their air force, it's a freaking joke, man, right? It's a freaking joke. Same can be said about France. Only reason why French armed forces can be seen with more or less seriousness is nuclear capabilities of France, and they do have unlike UK, France has not just nuclear submarines, but they have also missiles and bombs, by the way, that are nuclear capable. So that gives us no chance to ignore them. But when it comes to conventional warfare, of course, British armed forces, French armed forces are freaking joke, man. That's it. French armed forces were not able to do anything in Sahel province, by the way. They've been kicked out, right? So what are we talking about? But nevertheless, as I already said, together, European NATO member states can pull off a quite significant number of troops, 800,000, potentially even million, by the way, more, if they will go ahead with their, mobilization. If Brussels and EU member states will actually go ahead with their next phase of escalation and potentially full-scale open war with Russia. But yet again, they will only delay inevitable, which is a capitulation of the Western elites. And this will happen even if US will send its troops, right? In conventional warfare, NATO cannot win against Russia, no chances there, because we should understand, by the way, even if Russia will not use nuclear weapons first, well, Russia has friends all over the world, right? And Russia would not be alone in this fight against whole NATO. China definitely gonna support Russia. Of course, North Korea will support, Iran will support, potentially even India will support, with the troops too, if necessary, yet again, if necessary. And many other countries, by the way, not just from Middle East, not just from Southeast Asia, but also from Africa, also from South America, potentially even from North American, some of the North American states, right? After all, we should keep in mind that even son of deputy of the CIA, U.S. intelligence service, son of the deputy of the director of the CIA, was fighting on the Russian side and died fighting in zone of special military operations. So we do have many supporters, even in US and in Canada, for example. Nothing to be said about Mexico, by the way, and other countries. And so, yes, that's how the situation is. And one more area where, of course, direct clashes might happen between Russia and the NATO, especially European NATO member states, is the Baltics. I have spoke about this many times, and other commentators in the segment of News and Political Commentary also on a regular basis highlighting high level of tensions in the Baltics, all due to irresponsible policies of their NATO. And we have this report, for example, now that NATO's anti-submarine warfare exercises have begun in the Baltic Sea. You guess against which country this exercise is being done? Against Russia, obviously. And this step is, yet again, addition to all the other escalatory steps that West is taking against Russia. So let me give you some details on these exercises. So NATO's anti-submarine warfare exercises have begun in the Baltic Sea and will continue until November 14th. Their maneuvers, dubbed Merlin, will be conducted under the direction of the Swedish Navy along the country's coastline and territorial waters. The Swedish Armed Forces stated that their uneven uneven seabed creates numerous hiding places for submarines. They also claim that the Swedish Navy has developed anti-submarine warfare techniques adapted to the conditions of the Baltic Sea. Yes, adapted, of course, and that's why every now and then there is a hysteria, isn't it? Either in Norway or in Sweden, by the way, or in some other NATO member there, when they are first declaring that they spotted Russian submarine in their territorial waters, and then this hysteria lasts for a week or two or three or more even, and eventually they cannot provide no proof, nothing, that there was any Russian submarines anywhere close to their territorial waters, right? So what kind of anti-submarine warfare Swedish militaries are talking about? Hysteria? Okay, maybe, but hysteria will not help to deal with Russian submarines if it comes to hostilities, actual direct open hostilities, right? Exercises will involve ships from NATO's Standing Maritime Group 1, Swedish corvettes, frigates, auxiliary vessels, submarines from the Swedish and the German navies, and helicopters. It is specified that such maneuvers are being held for the second year in a row, and starting in the fall of 2026 will become permanent NATO exercises. Yeah, what surprise, what surprise. And we should also keep in mind, when it comes to Baltics, dear friends, we should keep in mind that quite a number of high-ranking officials from NATO countries, US militaries, European militaries, they were all openly saying that they are in a position to obliterate Kaliningrad region. They are in a position to, and they were using this language, by the way, to obliterate Kaliningrad, which means to kill millions of people. That's the language that NATO officials were using. They are in a position to blockade Kaliningrad region. They can do this and that, while completely ignoring that any attempt to blockade Kaliningrad region will be seen by Moscow as a direct act of war, right? As it should be. And there will be consequences for that. Nothing to be said about all the other hostile steps that can trigger direct military clashes between Russian and NATO militaries literally any day, any time, right? There, yet again, complete irresponsible, absolutely irresponsible policies of the NATO countries. But yeah, what you're gonna do about it, right? We can only warn them, and Moscow is issuing warning after warning after warning in attempt to bring some senses to the Western elites. But these warnings just don't work, and will not work, I'm afraid, until Russia will eventually use force, only language that Western elites understand, which is force, by the way. Unfortunately, we don't really have any other option to deal with these psychopaths that are in charge in the Western countries. Force is only option that we actually have now left. It's unfortunate to say so, but this is factual, isn't it? Majority of our community probably will agree with me, because no matter how many warnings Moscow is going to issue, they're going to ignore it. And after all, NATO Secretary General is openly saying, publicly saying, that he just don't cares what Putin, for example, has to say. So if Western elites don't care about what Putin has to say, then they definitely don't care about any other Russian official and any other warning that comes from Russian state institutions. And that's why I'm saying, because of this blind hatred of Russia, because this mistaken emboldenment of the Western elites, they're not going to stop escalating. They're going to go ahead with the next phase of escalation and basically force Moscow to retaliate. And if that happens, Moscow will retaliate with such a force and scale that will change everything, I think. And might actually fast track final resolution of this crisis, which is capitulation of the Western elites. It's just inevitable, right? Anything Western can do will only delay capitulation of the Western elites. That's how it is, and that's how I see. And dear friends, before I continue, let me just remind you, if I may, that this live stream is a big community chat, a big traditional Sunday community chat and fundraising stream. And if you have questions or if you want to discuss any topic, literally any topic, by the way, might be linked to politics or geopolitics, might not. But if you want to discuss any topics, you can send your question or commentary through support platforms. I'm streaming on both my channels, on YouTube and Rumble, so you can use a super chat feature on Rumble and simultaneously donate to the channel. You can use PayPal platform, Boosty platforms. You can subscribe to my Patreon or Boosty pages, where I have extra content on regular basis. And you can become a premium subscriber also on my Rumble channel. There is a crypto option also. There is several means. All the links are on this video in description box and in the pinned comment. For now, there was no super chat, no nothing. Otherwise, Anya, my wife, would tell me, send me a screenshot of that. Hopefully, things will improve in next until I will end a new segment. So yes, and also it is a fundraising stream, as I already said. So you can support with donations through those support platforms. And now let's continue with some other news. And next is this one, by the way, that Ukraine received $52 billion from the West this year. Of this 52 billion, 22.9 billion came from interests on Russian frozen or immobile their assets. So the total volume of foreign financial assistance, excluding arms supplies, by the way, arms supplies are different, funds for their so excluding arms supplies, funds for their procurement and their investments in Ukraine's military industrial complex, for the period from November 1st, 2024 to October 31st, 2025 amounted to $52 billion, of which 22.9 billion was interest on frozen Russian assets. This is according to TASS calculations based on data from the National Bank of Ukraine. So $52 billion financial aid for this Western-backed terrorist regime of Zelensky. And this is, of course, just financial aid. If you add military aid and everything else, overall number will be 150 billion, I guess, around there, 150 billion. And I remind you, dear friends, that for next year, Kyiv regime is demanding from West, not asking, but demanding from West another 60 plus billion dollars, right? And I'm afraid, I'm afraid they're gonna receive this. I'm afraid they're gonna receive these funds. So, yeah. Let's continue with some other news. And same time, on one part, we have these reports about billions and billions that was transferred to Kyiv regime by the West. On the other hand, we have Financial Times' report that EU can't cover costs for Kyiv regime without tapping Russian assets. So EU member states will face a ballooning deficit and the debt unless they agree to use frozen Russian assets as collateral to fund their Kyiv regime. European Commission has warned in a document seen by the Financial Times. The paper was circulated to EU capitals following their last month's failure to reach a consensus on reparation loan of around 140 billion euros or $160 billion, the Financial Times reported on Friday. Without tapping the frozen Russian central bank reserves, the EU would need to either authorize joint borrowing or issue direct grants, both of which would directly affect national budgets and their increased public debt. The Commission warned it remains unclear whether the option of not bankrolling Kyiv was even considered. Not of course, they're not going to consider removing their assistance to Kyiv regime, of course, because Brussels and the majority of EU member states are controlled by globalists, and globalists or Western elites, they are not ready to acknowledge defeat, by the way. They are not ready. They still think, these European psychos especially, right? European so-called elites still think that they can achieve a strategical defeat of Russia. So they will steal all the taxpayers' money if they have to, right? Not just Russian frozen assets, but all the taxpayers' money to bankroll this proxy war that they are waging against Russia, right? And I remind you, dear friends, even though last month EU failed to pressure Belgium to agree on a stealing of 140 billion euros that are frozen in Belgium financial institutions, Euroclear and so on. Next summit on this topic going to take place in early December, and by then I think there's a quite high chances that by that meeting in early December, European elites and the globalists basically will force Belgian government to agree that these assets of the Russian central bank should be stolen, right? And they're gonna steal it, man. No doubts about it, right? And they have all the support from US. For example, we have this reporter from Reuters that US fully backs the EU using frozen Russian assets as a tool to force Moscow to peace on its terms. Reuters citing anonymous source in Washington, assets would also be used to rebuild Kyiv control territory, allegedly. They're going to be no Kyiv control territory once this conflict will end, by the way. That's something that Western elites are not able to grasp their mind around, but that's what's going to happen. Once this conflict will end, there will be no Kyiv control territory left. Western Ukraine probably will end up being claimed or reclaimed by Western neighbors of this former Soviet Republic, Poland, Hungary, Romania. The rest of the territory are going to join Russian Federation, including Kiev, by the way. Russian city, historical Russian city. That, of course, should be Russian, right? Some might say, well, there is a chance, and I was saying so some time ago, like that there is still little chance that Kiev and surrounding couple of regions will maintain quasi-statehood on a political map under their exclusive Russian zone of influence. But the longer this conflict continues, I think there is less and less reasons to believe that Moscow will actually ever agree political Ukrainianism to exist as a thing and the so-called Ukraine to exist on the political map with the capital being Kiev, man. I mean, seriously? It's a Russian city, man. What Ukraine? What are you talking about? It's a Russian city and should be in Russia, period, man. Western Ukraine, different story. I have spoke about it quite a number of times before, by the way. Historically, Western Ukraine is also Russian land, by the way, right? But due to demographic changes in the last couple of centuries, in Western Ukraine, majority people were, mixed, right? There was no Russian majority left there, basically, right? Majority was Poles, Hungarians, others, right? Romanians, and many Russians that were actually brainwashed to believe that they are now Ukrainians, right? So therefore, Western Ukraine is a different story. Historically, it's a Russian land for sure, but due to demographic changes and ideological changes in the past couple of centuries, I think it will be more rational to stay away from western parts of Ukraine and let their countries that this territory belong in past couple of centuries, like Poland, Hungary, Romania, let them deal with the local Nazis and the fascists, right? And Western Ukraine is a stronghold, by the way, of political Ukrainianism and Ukrainian Nazism and the fascism. We all know that, isn't it? But rest of the territory definitely has to be part of Russia, man. And when these new regions are going to be liberated, Dnipropetrovsk region, Kharkov region, Sumy, Chernigov region, Kiev, all the others, by the way, Poltava region and so on, they have to join Russian Federation. They have to be referendums there, and I have no doubts, by the way, that majority of people will say, you know what, help us, man, take us into Russian Federation. That's what people gonna say, and we're gonna see numbers like it was in Crimea, man, when overwhelming majority happily voted during the referendum to join Russian Federation. That's it. That's how it's gonna be. It's a Russian people. It's a Russian world, right? And the Russian world has to be united. I think so. And that's how situation gonna develop there. But yes, US is backing EU to continue this blackmail of Russia, attempts to blackmail Russia that, we're gonna steal your assets if you disagree on our terms. And Moscow's attitude is quite clear. Just, we don't care. Just go away, right? These frozen Russian assets already are stolen, but I don't think anybody actually believes here in Russia that we ever gonna see those assets in the hands of Russian central bank. No, man. But thanks God, there is ways to respond on that. And when Western elites will steal Russian frozen assets, hopefully Moscow will confiscate Western assets in Russia. Number is around 300 billion. There is discussion about exact number, but it's around $300 billion. And Moscow can confiscate these Western assets and use it as a collateral for Russian parties who lost their investments in the West. Central bank and also private citizens, by the way, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of Russian citizens are losing their money, their assets, right? Their investments in the West. Many people in the West are not realizing that when there is a talk about 300 billion of Russian assets was frozen in the West, half of it at least around half of it is investments of the private citizens of Russia that are not under sanctions. And most of these investments are small investments, by the way, like $20,000, $30,000. It's a household investments. And that's the assets that West froze, by the way. They are targeting ordinary Russian families, man. Right? That there were, for whatever reason, believed that they can invest in the West and these investments will be safe. That was a big mistake, of course. They should invest here in Russia, by the way, right? Or in friendly countries, but not in the West, man. And it was so clear to me personally for decades now that you should not invest in the West because your investments are not safe. And if I was able to think through this situation, then why other people did not think that way, I don't know. Anyways, there is another way. There is another way, by the way, that globalists might finance Kiev regime, and this other way is a sovereign fund of Norway. As you know, dear friends, Norway was involved in a terrorist attack on Nord Stream pipelines, right? According to Seymour Hersh, award-winning U.S. journalist, it was not just U.S. militaries and intelligence services that, after authorization of Biden's administration, blew up Nord Stream pipelines, obviously with participation of British militaries and intelligence services, but Norway was there too. I think at least US, UK, Norway, and Poland was directly engaged in that terrorist attack on Nord Stream pipelines, right? And as a result of Nord Streams being out of operation, Nord Stream pipelines, Norway make tremendous profits. US also, obviously, and Norway too, by the way, they are making unbelievable profits because they increase tremendously their exports of gas, right? In case of US, it's LNG, obviously, and they become already biggest LNG suppliers, I believe, to European economies, or they are competing for being number one there. But Norway, by the way, is also there. Norway is saying through pipelines and through LNG also, great volume of gas. And globalists are in no position to dictate US necessarily. I mean, what to do and when. US has its own political class with its own influential groups, right, of interests, and they are in conflict. Actually, US elites and European elites, they don't really like each other necessarily, but globalists definitely are in a position to tell Oslo what to do, right? They are in a position to tell Norwegian leadership what to do, and we should keep in mind that Norway is a British proxy, right? And London, by the way, British aristocracy, British political class is a dominant force in the globalist movement, right? They are main force. So definitely Norway can be told what to do, and they might allocate 100 billion euros, according to Times, British media outlet. Interesting. According to Times, Norway might give Ukraine a loan of 100 billion euros from the sovereign assets. Interesting, isn't it? We have a quote from an article there. Norwegian government is discussing the possibility of providing Ukraine with a 100 billion euro loan, using part of its sovereign fund, the largest in the world, with global investments totaling $1.8 trillion, by the way, as a collateral. According to media, four of the 9 parties represented in the Norwegian parliament have approved this initiative. So they have to work a little more. I mean, globalists, right? London have to pressure some other groups there in Norway, and I guess they will find at least another 100 billion euros, by the way, to prolong this proxy war against Russia. So they will steal frozen Russian assets. That's 140 billion euros plus, right? They're going to steal everything, most likely, all 300 billion. All the reports were that some Russian private investors their assets might be unfrozen, and eventually Brussels might go ahead with the stealing of central bank assets only. Okay, we will find out. We will see, right? But in any case, they might steal not just frozen Russian assets, but also they might force Norway to allocate 100 billion euro, and they can pressure other countries too. So they will always find their money. Money is not issue, and I did said that quite a number of times before, that money not the issue for globalists, right? Their main issue right now to prolong this proxy war is not money, not weapons, but manpower. And that's why globalists and the neocons and their allies are pressurizing Kiev, pressing on Kiev that to begin forcefully mobilizing younger generation people too, from 18 to 25. And this is going to happen. It's only a matter of time when Kiev regime will actually begin mobilizing those younger people too. And they know it, by the way. Zelensky knows this perfectly well, right? And I guess among these criminals that are put in power in this so-called Ukraine by Western elites, I mean, maybe they are afraid, right? Maybe they are afraid that they have to pay price for all the crimes that they committed, right, against people. And I guess that's why a couple of months ago they opened border for younger people from 18 to 22, I believe, to flee. And already hundreds of thousands of young people flee Kiev-controlled territory. They did it because they are afraid that eventually West will order them to begin forcefully mobilizing those youngsters too. And well, no one gonna forgive them, isn't it? Sacrificing of hundreds of thousands of young people, and they're not gonna find a hideaway anywhere on this planet. They're gonna be hunted down by the relatives of those young people, to say the least, and they have a lot of enemies already. So therefore, hopefully, everybody on Kiev-controlled territory, all young generation people from 22 to 23, or from 18 to 22, will flee. Everybody should flee, by the way, if they have opportunity to avoid being sacrificed, right, by the globalists for their geopolitical agenda. But yes, that's the main issue that Western elites are facing. Lack of manpower, not lack of money, not lack of military equipment. First of all, lack of manpower. And that's why lately there are more and more talks, by the way, about other fronts being opened by the West against Russia. One direction is Southern Caucasus region. Western elites actively trying for all these years to overthrow local government of Georgian Dream in Georgia. They are failing, right? But according to Georgian leadership, Western elites were openly demanding from them to open a second front against Russia. They were openly demanding this. And the Georgian Dream said, no, we're not going to sacrifice our people, our country. We're not doing it. And that's why there is attempt after attempt of regime change in Georgia by the assets of the West. But when Western elites saw that they are in failing to force Georgia to open second front, and by the way, you know what Georgian government was told? That by Western elites, that you have several million people, and in this war with Russia, not all of you not everybody will die, right? We will give you money, weapons, and you just start. You will survive because everyone would not die. Some will survive. Can you imagine how cold-blooded those Western elites are to say something like that directly to government of Georgia? And I believe Georgian government has recordings of those conversations, by the way. There was a couple of hints on part of current leadership of Georgia that they have recordings, they can provide evidences of these conversations taking place. But nevertheless, Western elites failed till now, at least, to sacrifice Georgia, and they began generating escalation between Azerbaijan and Russia, right? And one of their ways they can open, one of their directions where they can try to open second front is also Azerbaijan now, right? And we should keep in mind that Azerbaijan is a proxy of not just Turkey, but at least indirectly, Azerbaijan is a proxy of London, right? British aristocracy, British elites, British ruling class. And why is that? Because, well, since the collapse of Soviet Union, one of the first groups of influence, global groups of influence that entered the Azerbaijan was which country? From which country? From UK. Through BP and through other means, right? London went in and they have a strong grip on Azerbaijan. Nothing to be said about Turkey being British proxy, and Azerbaijan and Turkey, they have very close ties, to say the least. Just a few days ago, there was a military parade in Azerbaijan, right? And Turkish militaries were involved in that parade too. And I have news for you, dear friends. When it comes to Azerbaijan, I have this news, for example, that I can tell you right now that, well, there was a first ever NATO delegation in Baku in recent days. And President Ilham Aliyev, President of Azerbaijan, Ilham Aliyev, announced that Azerbaijan will now transition its military to NATO standards, working closely with Turkey to modernize and phase out Russian-made weapons. NATO officials called Azerbaijan a valuable, great partner, let's say. Right? So you see links there. So Azerbaijan might be there one more direction through which globalists might open second front against Russia. It will be tragedy for peoples of Russia and Azerbaijan, obviously, and hopefully this will not happen. But, well, Baku did escalate with Moscow, isn't it, under orders of London? Baku did escalate with Moscow on an unprecedented scale, man. There was no such escalation between two countries, I will say, since I don't know, maybe even since the collapse of Soviet Union. And, well, Aliyev's government went that far. Lately, there was kind of steps back towards the de-escalation, but unfortunately, we are nowhere close to say that situation is being de-escalated. Certain steps was taken. Yes, Azerbaijan released illegally arrested Russian journalists, but still there's quite a number of unlawfully arrested Russian citizens in prison in Azerbaijan, and Baku still continues to be hostile, by the way, let's say this way. I think that's my interpretation. And the reasoning behind it, I think I said straight away that behind this escalation is London. It's a globalists, right? That messing around, and I'm still on the same page. Now NATO is there too. You tell me why. And another direction where West's globalists can escalate with Russia is Baltics, by the way, Baltic Chihuahuas, right? Baltic Chihuahuas. They are NATO member states, yes, but no one cares about it. They don't care. They might actually order their puppets in the government of these Baltic Chihuahuas, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, to open a second fort, to go ahead with some provocations that will provoke military confrontation with Russia, right? Some might argue there is a high risks in Central Asia, where globalists might try with help of very same Turkey and also US to destabilize the situation. And on this matter, dear friends, I remind you that just like a couple of days ago, delegations, the leadership of Central Asian republics were in Washington and had a meeting with Trump. Right? And U.S. administration, also neocons, God knows with whom delegates also had a meeting and what they actually discuss, right? But nothing good will come out of it, obviously, because Western world is a destructive force, man. And when it comes to Central Asia, of course, Western globalists and neocons, they have an interest to destabilize Central Asia. Not necessarily, I mean, at least neocons want to destabilize Central Asia, not necessarily to use it against Russia, but to use it against China. I spoke about it on numerous occasions before, but they, together with globalists, might get united in attempt to destabilize Central Asia to use against both, against Russia and against China, right? Well, they tried on numerous occasions already, isn't it? And when it comes to destabilizing Central Asia and using it against Russia, we should first of all think about Kazakhstan. Obviously, leader of Kazakhstan gonna come to Russia, Tokayev, in shortly. Basically, they're gonna be state visit of Kazakhstani leader into Russian Federation, and I think two sides will discuss for sure means of securing their good relationships between the countries, right, to avoid any potential destabilization. But Kazakhstan is a target for the West for sure, and the border between Russia and Kazakhstan is tremendous, by the way. Kazakhstan was the second largest republic in the Soviet Union. It has a massive territory, right? And the border is just tremendous. Just look at this. It starts from Caspian Sea, by the way, and goes all the way towards the Mongolia, right? And Kazakhstan might be target for globalists and neocons because, yet again, Kazakhstan borders not just Russia but also China. And you think why globalists and the neocons, Western secret services were training, for example, I mean, numerous number, thousands of terrorists in the Idlib province of Syria. You think why they were training thousands of terrorists in Syria, especially Turkic-speaking ones, and especially Uyghur minorities from China itself? Because I'm 100% convinced Western elites want to destabilize Central Asian republics, especially ones that are bordering with China, to use then borderline areas as uncontrolled territories where they will deploy those terrorist groups, thousands of terrorists, to infiltrate northern western parts of China, where basically ethnic minorities, Turkic-speaking ethnic minorities are living, including Uyghurs, right? So yes, third direction, or fourth direction, where globalists might try to open second front against Russia is Central Asia, for sure. Although Central Asia can be used against, and I'm afraid will be used against, China too. And I'm talking about it because on the Kiev control territory, they are already facing the obstacles that they cannot really deal with, lack of manpower. And only so many people they can recruit through private military companies in Latin America or Africa or elsewhere to deploy as a mercenaries, right? So yes, risks of other fronts opening is still there, of course. That's been said, dear friends, let's continue with some other news. Although I want to. It's already an hour, okay. Hopefully, you like the news segment. Hopefully, it's interesting enough, dear friends. I still have quite a number of news, and then I will join our community chat. I can give you an update that there was a donation on PayPal. No super chat yet, but there was a donation on PayPal. Of course, I will highlight that after news segment. And so, yes, let's continue with some news now. And the TASS news agency is reporting that Russian armed forces liberated Volche settlement in Dnipropetrovsk region, and also Russian militaries liberated the Ribnaya settlement in Zaporozhye region. Let me show you these settlements, dear friends, on the map. So this is Ribnaya settlement in Zaporozhye region, right next to border with Dnipropetrovsk region. And earlier I reported, dear friends, that Russian forces liberated Uspanovka settlement, another major stronghold that Kiev regime had in this direction on a right bank of Yanchur River, right? And their entire settlement is controlled by Russian forces. And reports are that Russian troops not just liberated Ribne, but also began liberating Slatka settlement. And this is, of course, Gulyai-Polye direction. Gulyai-Polye is a major stronghold of Kiev regimes on the eastern flank of Zaporozhye region. In the center, there is a Orekhov settlement, of course, and in the western side, Russian troops are advancing in Stepnogorsk and Primorsk areas. When it comes to Dnipropetrovsk region, this is a Volchye settlement area that is under Russian control. And when it comes to Dnipropetrovsk, Russia, take a look, man. Everything west of this red line is Dnipropetrovsk region, right? And bridgehead is quite big. And clearly Russian militaries are preparing ground for a sectoral scale offensive operation. And when order comes, well, we're going to see very rapid advances of the Russian troops in Dnipropetrovsk region. I spoke about it quite a few times, but for new members of community that are interested, I will say that advances of the Russian troops in Dnipropetrovsk region are going to be much more rapid than in the DPR, for example, for several reasons. First of all, of course, in past years of special military operation, Russian troops gained tremendous volume of experience, right, in this new type of warfare that we are seeing on the ground. Secondly, Russian troops have numerical advantages in military equipment. And thirdly, Kiev regime is experiencing tremendous issues with the manpower. And fourth, but not any less important, is even more important, some might say, in terms of strategy, that the Dnipropetrovsk region not as heavily urbanized and fortified, therefore, by Kiev regime as it was and still is the case in DPR, for example, or LPR, right? Dnipropetrovsk region mostly is a steppe area, far fewer settlements, far fewer cities, right, that can be used as a strongholds. And therefore, as I already said, there is at least several reasons, several indicators why we should expect rapid advances of the Russian forces in Dnipropetrovsk region when order comes to launch sectoral scale offensive operation. And bridgehead is already massive, by the way, and Russian troops advancing not just on this southern sector of the Dnipropetrovsk region, but on the northern side too. And Ivanovka settlement, for example, is already under Russian control on the north, and a number of other settlements. Filia, for example, is under Russian control for quite some time now. Of course, we have to talk about Pokrovsk Mirnograd in Dnipropetrovsk region. Pokrovsk is under Russian control, by the way, 100% Russian control, no 90, no 95. I know some channels are saying that, some military channels are saying that it's a 90% control of Russia, 95%. No, it's 100% under Russian control, 100%, right? There are little pockets of resistance from encircled formations of the Kiev regime. That's about it, right? City is 100% under Russian control, and clearing operation is underway. And because this city before, during the Soviet era, by the way, was home to 60,000 people around that. You can imagine that it's a relatively big town, right? There is thousands of different buildings on the ground for infrastructure, underground infrastructure. So it takes, I don't know, another week or two probably to finalize clearing operation. So Pokrovsk is under full Russian control. There is nothing to discuss there, right? There are small pockets of resistance, yes, but this is case always. Whenever relatively large settlement is liberated, clearing operation sometimes takes much more time than actual advance and establishment of operational control over the city. Mirnograd is still largely controlled by Kiev regime's forces, all the Russian troops already advancing in the southern part of the city and the northern parts of the city. And Kiev regime's troops, I'm quite sure, by the way, I have read so many articles on the topic that Russian troops basically want to inform encircle troops of Kiev regime that they can be treated according to Geneva Convention. They should not afraid to surrender. They should not die for Zelensky and the Western geopolitical agenda. And significant time and effort is being put basically to give their encircled troops of Kiev regime, majority of whom probably most likely are forcefully mobilized people, by the way, that never wanted to be on the front line anyways. But they've been scared, right? They've been scared that their relatives might be harassed by Kiev regime if they will surrender. They've been scared because some of them being brainwashed that Russian troops not taking no POWs, which is hard to understand how anybody can believe in that if you keep in mind how many times there was a POW exchanges, right? But nevertheless, propaganda does work on people, right? On some people at least, on many even. So some are afraid that Russian troops are not taking prisoners, which is a complete lie, but they've been brainwashed, and some others might have some other reasons, right? God knows, man. But Russian side is putting big time and effort now to drop leaflets, to open radio channels on which there is constantly this message that just don't be afraid, man. Leave the freaking arms and take a white flag and surrender, save your life. And hopefully majority of troops will listen, man. Hopefully they will listen. That's why I think Russian troops are not really that keen to advance in Mirnograd. Probably Russian side will take some time to persuade as many people as possible in Mirnograd, as many enemy troops, as many hostile troops in Mirnograd as possible to lay down arms and surrender, because they don't have to die, man, for the regime and for Western geopolitical agenda. They just don't have to die. So it's a noble gesture, by the way, noble step from Russian militaries for sure to give every possible chances to hostile troops to save their lives, sir. But eventually, of course, this cannot last forever, right? And eventually, whoever will surrender, okay, they will save their lives. Whoever will decide to stay and fight, well, it will be their choice. It will be their choice. And I think before end of November, this Pokrovsk-Mirnograd story can be resolved one way or another, but can be resolved. Yet again, Pokrovsk is under full Russian control. In Mirnograd, Russian troops are, doing whatever they can to allow, give the opportunity to Kiev regime's forces to save their lives and surrender. And another place where Russian troops encircled significant grouping of forces of Kiev regime is, of course, Kupiansk. And, Russian militaries are advancing, by the way, and very little portions of the Kupiansk is still under control of Kiev regime. There is constant attempts of Kiev regime to break into Kupiansk from western flank, but all these attacks are suicidal, and so many videos are circulating. Probably you have seen on a Telegram or on military channels when Russian troops are picking one by one all these incoming vehicles with their military personnel and munition that are trying to break into Pokrovsk from west. Why Kiev regime is sending those troops on these suicidal missions is anybody's guess, by the way, because Kiev regime just simply don't cares about lives of these troops, right? But yet again, troops of Kiev regime in Pokrovsk, in Kupiansk, have a basic choice to make. Do they want to die for Kiev regime and Western geopolitical agenda, or they want to live? If they want to live, they have to lay down arms and surrender. They already proved themselves to be fighters, right? They don't have to prove nothing to nobody. Russian people know how to fight, by the way, and they are Russian people, brainwashed, forcefully mobilized, or whatever, but they proved that they are good fighters. They give a hell of a lot to fight, but it is time to lay down arms and surrender. and save their lives now, because their families are waiting for them, man. Right? And hopefully they will. And in general, by the way, about 5,000 plus soldiers of Kiev regime are encircled in Mirnograd area now, because most of their Kiev regime troops withdraw from Pokrovsk towards Mirnograd, and about 5,000 troops are encircled in Kupiansk area. Russian troops are advancing all along the front line, by the way. I'm focused maybe on several areas in this update, but Russian troops advancing all along the front line. Initiative is in Russian hands, and there is not theoretical chance even for globalists to turn the tide. And let's continue with some other news. And well, we have statements of Pushilin, head of DPR, Donetsk People's Republic, that Kiev regime's forces are soldiers of Kiev regime's troops. Forces are surrendering in Krasnoarmeysk, which is Pokrovsk, basically in Pokrovsk area. Okay, good. That's exactly what they should do. They should not die for Western geopolitical agenda, for sure. And also, dear friends, I spoke about militarism, isn't it? I spoke about militarism of the Western elites, and there are exceptions. There are exceptions, and Hungary is definitely that exception, right? And it was day before yesterday, Prime Minister of Hungary was having a meeting with the US President Donald Trump, and he did make quite a few interesting statements. And for example, I'm quite sure he used this opportunity to brief basically US President Trump on actual situation on a battlefield, right? He praised Trump for his efforts, peace efforts, sort of, right? But he also said that Brussels is extremely militarist, and it's only Hungary. He said only Hungary that is for actual de-escalation. Slovakia is on the same page, actually. But rest is hostile, and they don't want war to end. And he said it openly, directly, right there, in face of Trump, right? That constantly talks how much he wants to end this conflict. I mean, really? Go talk to globalists and their puppets then in European governments if you actually want to end this conflict. Stop supplying weapons and money. Do something about it, right? If you are genuine. But anyways, let me give you this short video, dear friends. I think it's interesting. I believe I have a video, and yes, I do. This is the video.
We were talking about that with Victor. He understands Putin and knows him very well. And I feel that, I mean, I'm going to let you say what you think, but I think that Victor feels we're going to get that war ended in the not too distant future. Victor, do you want to talk about that?
Well, I'm strongly convinced. So the question is whether we Westerners are unified or not. The problem is that the president has huge peace efforts, which are just splendid and very positive for the European continent and all the peoples of Europe. But at the same time, we are not unified because Brussels and the Europeans has a different approach to the war. So the only pro-peace government is the United States government and the small Hungary in Europe anyway. All the other governments prefer to continue the war because many of them think that Ukraine can win on the front line, which is a misunderstanding of the situation. So it's a complicated issue. We will discuss it. It requests not just 2 minutes to respond to your question, but rather than our lecture. Sorry, not to continue more than that.
To both of you.
You see, by the way, Orban is, he's a man. I'm telling you. Hungary is lucky to have these great leaders. Orban, Szijjártó, by the way, is quite tough and I will say successful foreign minister. Probably has a great future as a politician. I mean, they are tough guys, man, right? And Orban, right there, in face to all this media, in face to Trump, said that, you know what, it's Hungary, Slovakia is there too, but he said there is a Hungary and that's it, right? All the others in Europe want this war to be prolonged, right? Because they still are delusional and think that they can win on a battlefield, they can achieve strategical defeat of Russia, which is a complete misunderstanding of actual situation on the front line. And he said that he will brief Trump. He hinted there that he will brief Trump on actual developments, right? And he knows, man. I mean, Hungarian military intelligence services, and therefore Hungarian leadership knows perfectly well what is going on the battlefield, right? So it will be good if Trump will get some good briefing, man, on the actual situation on the battlefield, because Cat Kellogg and people like that are around the Trump, Cat Kellogg, Marco Rubio and the rest, man, they are neocons and they are all about wars, right? They are all about weapon sales, and they're not gonna brief Trump on the true developments. So it will be great if Orban actually gave him a good briefing, man, and hopefully he did. Hopefully he did. But it is good. It is good to see that representatives of the collective West publicly, openly are informing, making these very necessary and needed statements, right? To challenge basically Western false narratives and propaganda narratives, right? So well done to Orban, man. What can I say? I mean, well done. Let's continue with some more news. And meanwhile, exactly to counter these far fewer voices of truth in the West, especially in Europe, you guess what Brussels plans to do? They want to establish Ministry of Truth, man. And this is not a joke, man. This is not some kind of sick joke. That's what those sick so-called elites in Europe, globalists, want to do. They want to establish institutions that will monitor their field of information, right? And combat truth information and only allow false narratives to be pushed on the public. Although they will, of course, use different language, different words. They know how to talk, right? But in reality, we know what is going on. And let me tell you, by the way, EU is as time goes by, EU is more and more looks like a extremely failed version of the Soviet Union. Members of our community from Europe, please share your take. But don't you see some similarities there? I mean, EU actually looks like a worst copy of the Soviet Union, man. It's so bad, man. In Soviet Union, at least there was a breakthroughs, by the way, right? In many fields. Tell me what breakthrough you have in Europe, in European Union, under the leadership of these unelected bureaucrats. What kind of breakthroughs did you have? Any? It's so bad, man, what is going on in EU. Let me give you some details on that. European Union is planning to launch a centralized hub for monitoring and countering what it calls foreign disinformation, according to leaking documents seen by The Guardian. Critics have long warned that the Brussels initiatives amount to institutionalization of a censorship regime, according to European Commission proposal set to be published on November 12th. Their so-called Center for Democratic Resilience will function as a part of a broader democracy shield strategy pitched by Commission President Ursula von der Leyen ahead of 2024 European election. Ahead of 2024 or 2020 or next? Pitched. This initiative was already presented in 2024. Okay. Participation in the center will be voluntary, and the Commission has welcomed like-minded partners outside the bloc, including UK and their countries seeking accession. yeah, okay, Ministry of Truth, go ahead and do this. Go ahead, and they're gonna do it, man. They're gonna do it. And if censorship is just on extreme levels right now, then well, give it a little time, and probably vast majority of Europeans will have no chance even to have any alternative viewpoints on anything, right? There will be only one point of view, and that's it. Everything else will be designated as being misinformation, disinformation, or whatever. That's where Europe is, but I'm telling you, this is a European Union is a worst possible copy of the Soviet Union. Clearly. Meanwhile, uh, Lavrov, by the way, spoke about relationships with the US and stated that US seems to be having a hard time convincing Zelensky not to interfere with the settlement, peace settlement. The United States appears to have encountered the difficulties to pressuring Vladimir Zelensky not to interfere with the settlement in Ukraine. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said in an interview with the RIA Novosti, back then, and this is quote, back then at the Alaska summit, the Americans assured us that they could ensure that Zelensky would not impede their peace process. Apparently, certain difficulties have arisen on this issue. Furthermore, as far as we know, Brussels and London are trying to pursue Washington to abandon its intention to resolve the crisis through political and diplomatic means, and fully engaged in efforts to exert military pressure on Russia, that is to finally become a part of the war party, he said. And I mean, come on, man, how long are you going to be this diplomatic or polite towards Russia, towards Washington, right? How long Russia has to be this polite towards Washington, Russian government, man? It does not make no more sense, man, whatsoever. Lavrov really thinks that US is not a party of the war, I mean, or not a member of the war party. How so? I don't know. But yes, yet again, this diplomatic language, by the way. I guess Lavrov is hinting that it seems like it's not U.S. political class but it's globalists that are dictating the terms, right? That are more powerful because clearly Washington is failing to influence Zelensky, which is a puppet of globalists, right? First of all, London. And this is true, and maybe it would be better if Russian politicians began talking directly, straightforward, without any hints, because one will read this update, right? And if not bother to think about, what he actually meant, the only question you will have, come on, man, do you really actually still think that US is not a member of this war party? What the hell? This is so not serious, isn't it? Anyways, man. Anyways, hints, extreme diplomacy, everything. This is not working, and I guess Moscow is getting closer and closer to realize that this attitude is not working. And by the way, it's 1.5 hours. I'm online already. What should I do? Continue with the news, dear friends? I'm looking at the chat now. What you think? I still have quite a lot of news left. Should I continue with the news that I have bookmarked, or should I join community now and be engaged with chatter? Share your opinion, dear friends. What you prefer? Okay, I see. Okay, dear friends. Okay, maybe I will just go literally, just headline by headline. It will take 5 minutes maybe, and I will join community. So I think this is interesting report, dear friends. After 8 years of struggles with their new infantry fighting vehicle by British military-industrial complex, they finally seems like are ready to deploy to army, to transfer to army. Ajax IFVs that you see on your screen right now. This vehicle had numerous troubles, right? It's a multi-billion dollar or multi-billion pound exercise on part of British government and their military industrial complex. They're gonna adapt now this vehicle, hundreds of them being ordered. Let's see how good this Ajax gonna be. Also, Trump, by the way, I have to mention, just a few days ago, Trump stated, you know what, that he was very much in charge, and that his US was very much in charge of Israeli attack on Iran. I think this is something that we have to, of course, highlight. I think other channels did pay attention to this moment. Let me give you a video on that. I think this is important, man. I think this is. So look.
It's a little like Israel. Israel attacked first. That attack was very, very powerful. I was very much in charge of that. When Israel attacked Iran first, that was a great day for Israel because that attack did more damage than the rest of them put together. What I'd like to see is I'd like to see voter ID. Who wouldn't approve voter ID?
So he was very much in charge, isn't it? He was very much in charge. Okay. We knew this. Of course, Israel would not ever dare to attack Iran without US being on the board. Obviously, by the way, we all understand this. But Trump initially was saying that he knew nothing about it. Remember? Trump was saying that he knew nothing about, and now he's saying that, well, he was in charge, man. The US was in charge. Okay. We know how trustworthy you are, you know. Okay. Also, dear friends, Kazakhstan probably will join Abraham Accords if this matters in any way, shape, or form. Kazakhstan, I believe, recognized Israel straight after Soviet Union was collapsed. As soon as Kazakhstan became independent republic, by the way. So, what is the point of joining Abraham Accords? I have no freaking idea, right? But okay. Also, dear friends, I think we have to talk about, maybe during the community chat also, we have to talk about dissatisfaction of the younger generation, young conservative or traditionalist generation in the US with the Republican Party and the leadership of Republican Party, because I have seen more and more videos on internet, by the way, when leadership of Republicans is challenged by young people, young voters, on number of issues, including what America First means for them. Is America First Israel first, or is America First actually American people and their interests first, right? And I want to show you some short clip on this very matter when son of Trump, Trump's son, by the way, was challenged by young, not challenged, but asked question by younger Republican voter there, and you be the judge how adequate the answer was from Trump's son. I think his answer was not really that good, man. Definitely not. And this frustration among young conservatives in the US definitely gonna have a big influence, by the way, on US, for sure. Let me give you a video. I think this is interesting one, dear friends.
I'd like to ask about your father's relationship with Israel. He's taken over $230 million from pro-Israel groups. During the summer against Iran, even though he advised against it, Israel still attacked Iran and the U.S. still bombed on behalf of Israel. Your father's frustrations with Netanyahu have been made clear when he cursed on national TV over the situation. Israel has not been a great ally to the U.S. all the way since 1960 when they bombed the USS Liberty. Israel is a nation where Christians are constantly under attack.
You see the reaction of audience?
In both Gaza and the West Bank. We talk about America first and defending Christians, but how can we do this if we align ourselves with a nation that does not do that itself?
There's no question my father's had frustration. In fact, I think he's had frustration throughout the whole conflict with both sides. At the same time, make no mistake, you have a nation that is chanting death to America every single day on the streets of Tehran. You have a nation that will develop a nuclear weapon.
What he's talking about? Why this individual, son of a Trump, why he is acting like a moron? Why he's trying to create image that Iranians have no other things to do but to walk on the streets and chant death to America? What the hell, man? And after all the negative that US did to Iran, to people of Iran, should anybody be surprised that Iranians are maybe not as friendly towards US as a state, by the way? It has nothing to do with the people. I don't think they are anti-American people. No, they have issue with the US as an empire, right? That harmed Iran big time. So why should anybody be surprised after what US did to Iran? And I remind you, US CIA overthrow government, democratically elected government, by the way, in Iran, and put Shah in place, right? And only after the Islamic Revolution happened that removed Shah. We should not forget history, though, right? And what is this nonsensical claims that, well, they are running around and chanting death to America, death to this? Who gives a damn, man? Just because some people somewhere are chanting something, you're going to go ahead and bomb them? What psychopathic take is that? Right? With whom these individuals are talking to, they think? With the total morons that have no brains to think about stuff, or what? What kind of answer is this?
And you have a nation that will use that nuclear weapon against the Western way of life. There's no...
Why? What? Why they're gonna use nukes against Western way of life? He's lie after lie after lie, man. How dishonest these people really are. And I'm quite sure this creature, I don't even know what the freaking name is of this dirty animal, Trump's son, by the way. But what he's talking about? Why Iran gonna nuke anybody? They were talking about North Korea nuking everybody, right? But why North Korea did not nuke no one? They held nukes, by the way, right, for quite a while. Why they didn't nuke no one? And why Iran gonna nuke anybody? For no reason. If they will get their nukes. If they get their hands on the nukes, man. What the hell, man? And people are eating this garbage, right? And some are believing this nonsense, by the way. That, I mean, everybody outside of Western world is bloodthirsty. You know, all they think about day and night is how to harm Western world. No, man. What we want outside of the West is to be left alone by the West, right? We don't want Western political interference. We don't want Western countries to wage war against us, direct wars or proxy wars. Right? We don't want our assets to be frozen in the West, right? We don't want to face Western hostility in any way, shape, or form. And we are good then, right? We're not going to attack you because we have opportunities to do so, but we did not. We chose not to, isn't it? Man.
Question about it. You have a nation that will use proxies around the world, whether it's Yemen, whether it's a lot of other ones, to inflict serious harm on the station, and they don't hide it.
What nation? What he's talking about? They call a resistance movement Iranian proxy, which is not really accurate description. I will say resistance movement is a resistance movement, and Hezbollah, for example, in Lebanon was a direct result of Israeli occupation. Right? Hezbollah was not created by Iran, right? Houthis or Ansar Allah movement in Yemen, by the way, is a local, absolutely local group, right? It's a part of local history. It has nothing to do with Iran. Just because the Houthis are one of the sect of the Shiite movement does not make them automatically to be somebody's proxy, right? It does not work that way. Does Iran supported or continues to support her, if it can, resistance movement? Yes, but this organization is being called resistance for what reason exactly? Because they are resisting Israeli aggression, Israeli occupation. All the negativity that is created by Israel and its allies, right? These groups did not were not created from thin air, isn't it? And to call, by the way, Hezbollah and the Houthis or Iraqi Shiite militias, by the way, Iran's proxies is insulting for these groups. I'm quite sure about, man. Right? Do they cooperate with Iran, with Iran's IRGC? Potentially, yes. But are they taking orders from Tehran? No, man. No. Hezbollah not gonna take no orders from nobody, man. Anyways.
They don't hide it. In fact, it's really interesting. About a year ago, maybe a little over a year ago, they put out, the Ayatollah in Iran put out an emoji, a little short video clip of a drone hovering over my father's head as he played golf. This was literally posted on the Ayatollah's, Twitter page.
And what? I mean, tell me, and what? Am I online? Well, there is some issues with the webcam, and so U.S. is attacking Iran, bombing Iran, killing Iranians, and what if someone, religious leader or whomever, by the way, puts some video to kind of mock or troll leader of their hostile state, in this particular case Trump? What is the big deal there? You are actually killing people in Iran, right? And you are saying that those people, Iranians, are hostile and they're threatening you in America? I mean, come on, man. Who is buying this freaking nonsense, man? But anyways, I mean, you tell me, dear friends, if answer from this creature, well, I don't know. I really don't know what is the name of this bitch, Trump's son, by the way. But I mean, you tell me if his answer is an adequate one on a question that this young man asked about her influence of Israeli lobby on US, right? US leadership and so on.
Following my father around a golf course with a crosshair right on top of him, as if they wanted to assassinate him and as if they wanted to hurt him. Guys, Iran wanted to destroy our way of life. They wanted to hurt us. They wanted to inflict real pain. What I can tell you about my father is, in terms of Israel, he wants a peaceful Middle East. He wants peace around the world. He wants to end the killing. He did that with India and Pakistan. He did that, obviously, you saw what he did with Cambodia and Thailand. He's tried to stop every conflict because he's sick and tired of the death and destruction. So there have been times that he got mad at Netanyahu. There's plenty of times where he's gotten mad at Putin. There's times where he's been mad at Zelensky. And he uses all of that as a tool to stop pain and destruction and death of people that are our age, your age in most cases, who have become political pawns and who have been marched into literally trenches and killed by the millions. And that's what my father wants to see end right this second. And that's why he's worked so hard for peace around the world. In fact, Donald Trump is the only...
Yeah, that's why Trump authorized transfer of 3,000 cruise missiles to Kyiv regime. And that's why Trump already authorized transfer of 2 billion plus worth weapons to Kyiv regime. On top of that, 3 billion missile program. Correct? That's a very peaceful steps from Donald Trump and his administration, isn't it? What the hell this idiot is talking about, man? Unbelievable.
President of the United States history that's never brought America to war, and I hope he keeps following in that crusade.
Okay, now you tell me, dear friends, if any of these statements from this son of the Trump makes any sense, man. Did he answer young man's question? No, he did not. He clearly did not. He went all over the place, right? But he did not answer the question. Is America first? And question is simple, to simplify it, is America first means America first, or is America first means Israel first? And why is Israel is that important in a conversation or decision-making process for Washington? It's a simple stuff, man. And many more and more people in US, especially younger generation, by the way, are dissatisfied with their influence, this foreign influencer. And let's be real, by the way, US is an Israeli proxy. It's no other way around. US is an Israeli proxy. And when Adelson or whatever their freaking name is of that family pays 200, 300 million to you, I mean, you are on them. You've been owned by them, right? Let's be real here. And there is no one, literally, I mean, with a very few exceptions, by the way, almost there's nobody in US Congress, either up or, in both houses, in both chambers, that have not received money from AIPAC. How come, man? How come? So some big changes is definitely inevitable, because these kind of answers are not going to work for long, man. And more people in US are going to begin acting, I mean, I see a comment now. Donald Duck is commenting, Israel does not need America, by the way. I mean, come on, man. You serious? You seriously think that Israel does not need America? You think all the Air Force, literally all the Air Force, all the weapons, most of the weapons, I mean, 90% of weapons that they used to kill Palestinians, tens of thousands of Palestinians, you think those weapons came from where? And who paid for those weapons? Those weapons came from US, and US taxpayers paid for those weapons. US taxpayers facilitated, basically, killing of tens of thousands of innocent civilians in Palestine. And also, they facilitated killing of innocent civilians in Iran when US, not just Israel, but also US struck there. So what we are talking about, without US assistance, without Western assistance, Israel would not be able to act this irresponsibly, this way, as it does when they kill anybody they want, not just in neighboring countries, but elsewhere too. Without Western support, especially US support, Israel would act most likely more adequately, for sure. I mean, more adequately than it is now. What are we talking about? Anyways, dear friends, it is time to join community chat, and let's discuss all this stuff, man. Let's discuss all this stuff. What kind of news I do have left? At least mention. I mean, probably you know what Lindsey Graham stated on Republican Jewish. When he was talking to Republican Jewish forum or something, Congress, he said that, well, he is optimistic about future of Republican Party because they are killing right people and cutting taxes. when someone says something like that openly, this publicly, and being cheered, by the way, you clearly know that with that society, something is wrong big time, man. When you use this language to address crowd, and you are using this language because you expect that you're gonna be, it's gonna be accepted, they're gonna love it. Well, you know that with that society, it's definitely something is not quite right. Let me show you a video. I even have, by the way, video of that. It's better to listen once than than my 10 explanations. No, this one I already shared, and yeah, just listen to this, man.
I just want to say I feel good about the Republican Party. I feel good about where we're going as a nation. We're killing all the right people and we're cutting your taxes.
Is that not sickening, man? This is actually healthy society when you can address with such a language and receive applause and laughs? What the hell, man? It's despicable, absolutely despicable, man. This is not normal. But that's where US is right now. This is US so-called political elites, right? I mean, it's crazy, man. It's just freaking crazy. It is what it is, and that's why more and more people in US, not just on the right but on the left also, by the way, are asking questions and are extremely dissatisfied and frustrated with their political system, and they're basically everybody that are formally or actually are in charge there. Turkey, meanwhile, issued a genocide arrest warrant for Netanyahu and 36 other senior officials. I'm not sure this warrant means anything actually on the ground, or will mean anything, but Ankara is just once again demonstrating its frustration with the Israeli leadership. They wanted to send military contingent, by the way, as a peacekeepers in Palestine, and Israel said no. And I guess even though most likely Ankara still tries nowadays to use its connection with London, with the globalists, potentially even with the US and neocons, to pressure Israel to allow Turkish troops as a peacekeepers in Palestine. I don't think Israel will, gonna allow. I don't think Netanyahu's regime gonna allow this, because it will look in Turkey, that will be some historical event. Because I remind you, not that long ago, Holy Land was controlled by Ottoman Empire, right? And the current regime in Turkey, current ruling party, they are dreaming about. They are neo-imperialists, right? They are dreaming about rebuilding power and influence of Ottoman Empire. Maybe not in the borders of the empire, but at least in terms of influence, to have same scale. And under current leadership, Turkey is clearly striving for and doing its best to become a leader among Sunni Muslim world, right? And this potential deployment of Turkish troops into Palestine would be seen as, of course, will be seen as a much bigger event than just deployment of peacekeepers. That's what I want to say. And Israel knows this, and that's why they will never allow Turkey to send its peacekeepers, most likely. But nevertheless, these two countries, by the way, we know they are more often cooperating than not, Israel and Turkey. But I think these two countries are destined for direct confrontation. Everything that is done by now by globalists, by American political groups in regards to Turkey and Israel is to basically delay inevitable. because these two countries are heading towards collision, 100%. By the way, after regime change in Syria, that Israel actually participated in a great length. Now, of course, Turkey has a actual ground presence in Syria, right? Syria is a Turkish proxy mainly, and it's only a matter of time when Damascus will begin experiencing some trouble with Israel. They already do, by the way, right? And it's only a matter of time when Turkey will say, well, enough is enough, we are going in. And they're going to end up in direct conflict with Israel. Before that, I guess Turkey will build nuclear weapons, though. So this is prospect of next 10-15 years. I'm quite sure in 10-15 years' time, Turkey will be nuclear power also, alongside Iran. That's how it is, I think. Before Turkey will acquire nuclear weapons, I don't think Ankara will dare to escalate with Israel big time, but they're going to get there. Meanwhile, Israel continues to bomb Lebanon big time, right? And I think despite attempts by new leadership of Hezbollah to stay out of confrontation, direct conflict with Israel, I think their window for maneuver is closing fast, right? Because Israeli bombing campaigns on Lebanon, on southern Lebanon especially, is becoming not just increasing in scale, but are resembling now bombing campaigns on the Gaza Strip, right? So at one point, Hezbollah probably will say, "No, what we have to intervene. We just have to intervene," and they will, and I don't think Israeli army is in position to defeat Hezbollah. They might think they have defeated Hezbollah, but this is misunderstanding. They did not defeat even Hamas. Nothing to be said about Hezbollah. RT is reporting, meanwhile, that U.S. is seeking to expand the military presence in Syria. U.S. is seeking to establish a military presence in the Syrian capital Damascus by the end of the year. Reuters reported on Thursday, citing sources familiar with the matter. And even though Washington rejected this claim, dear friends, I think this is true. I think Israel will demand from Washington to increase its military presence in Syria exactly to counter Turkey. Because they know, by the way, in Tel Aviv that they are on a trajectory of collision with Turkey, which is inevitable, absolutely inevitable. It will happen in 10-15 years' time, I guess, right? When Turkey will be a nuclear country. Or when Turkey will have a nuclear umbrella, let's say, from Pakistan, right? So only way Israel can now, and Turkey is a different country. Turkey is not Syria, by the way. Turkey actually has capable military, right? Military industrial complex, military. Turkey is a force to be reckoned with, for sure. And Israel knows that. Israeli leadership knows that. And they are using the influence of the US now to bring as much as possible US military into Syria, and also to bring US into Syria itself, I mean, as much as possible. Not just militarily, but politically and every other way. And it will happen. Does anybody has any doubts about it? US also conducted yet another B-52 flights off coast of Venezuela, while exercising in a potential strikes, missile launches, and we all understand it's only a matter of time when these missile launches will take place. United Aircraft Corporation of Russia has released the footage of a training flight of T-50 Su-57 prototype, basically, ahead of Dubai Air Show 2025, which will take place in Dubai from November 17th to 21st. And well, we're gonna have a great performance, I think, from Russian Su-57 prototype there, as it was case in China, by the way, just recently, when everyone who loves aviation was talking about that flight. And yeah, it's gonna be a big deal. I can show you difference, some video of this training. I have said many times before that Su-57 is definitely most beautiful fighter jet ever created there, from all generations, but and in this video, by the way, in this footage, I'm gonna turn off sound because YouTube has some issues with that. Or should I leave it? Okay, let's turn off, otherwise YouTube might delete this video, by the way. I think this is yes, most beautiful plane ever, by the way, build. It may not be as stealth as US or maybe even Chinese planes, but it's a wonderful plane, man. It's a great stuff there. Okay, enough. I did share this video on my Telegram and Twitter X pages. If you want to see full length, it's there. And I see a comment from Bucky Beaver that the most beautiful jet was ever created was Avro, and well, it was I might disagree about most beautiful, but it was a revolutionary plane for its time, for sure. And it was built by Canada, by the way, by Canada's aerospace industry. And the US did everything they could to kill that plane, right? They almost started, I don't know, I would not say war, but they used their influence to force Ottawa to cut that project and to purchase US weapons. And eventually that's exactly what happened to Avro, a legendary plane for sure. That was extremely advanced for its times, man. But when it comes to most beautiful, that's a different category, I think. And in my personal opinion, we might agree to disagree, obviously. But I think Su-57 is just absolutely wonderful plane, man. And this is jets, right? This is jet planes with turbojet engines, right? When it comes to fighter jets in general, of course, in that case, if you take in account Second World War era too, then of course we have to mention British Spitfire, by the way, legendary plane, obviously. Very beautiful. We have to mention Bf-109, of course, German Messerschmitt, also legendary fighter. US Mustang, by the way, it was P-49 or P-51 Mustang, also a wonderful plane. I cannot remember exactly, it was P-49 or P-51. It's P-51 Mustang, isn't it? Yes, it was P-51 Mustang. Wonderful plane and very capable one. In Soviet Union, we had Yak, many planes. Maybe none of those fighters, Russian or Soviet era fighters, become as famous worldwide as a Spitfire Bf-109 or the Mustang or Japanese Zero. But I did not like Japanese Zero, by the way. It was a most advanced fighter jet maybe for its time. When Americans encountered the Zero first time, they were shocked, right? But I just don't like Zeros, man. They are not good looking planes. You might disagree with me, but Japanese Zeros were not good looking. While Mustang, Bf-109, and I mean, they have brutal look, right? And Spitfire is a wonderful look. Not too brutal, but nice look, right? Hurricane also, by the way, British Hurricane actually intercepted more planes, if I remember correctly, more incoming German planes than Spitfires did. But all the love went for a Spitfire, and Hurricane was kind of forgotten. But anyways, I mean, if we are talking about all the fighter jets, of course, then we have to mention these planes too from Second World War era. But when it comes to powered planes, jet engine powered planes, then I will say Su-57 is an absolute winner, by the way, in my personal opinion. Su-57 is most beautiful plane. And by the way, there are reports that Russian and Indian side are getting closer and closer to achieve agreement on production of licensed production of Russian Su-57s in India. And there is already a big deal of experience in cooperation, of course, between the two countries. For example, India produces, under the license, produces Su-30 MKI fighter jets, and Su-30s are backbone of India's Air Force right now, and Su-57s might do the same, and in 10 years' time, already modernized for that period. Modifications of Su-57s might be the backbone of the Indian Air Force. Possibility for sure. Hungary secured, by the way, full exemption from U.S. sanctions on Russian oil, according to Orban. So his visit was successful in many ways in U.S. First, he actually hopefully he briefed Trump well enough on actual situation on a battlefield in this proxy war that West is waging against Russia. And also simultaneously, he, of course, tried to protect Hungary's interests, and he did it. He succeeded, by the way. Reports are that Hungary will continue without issues buying Russian oil, although some channels reporting that Hungary will have to buy American LNG for like $500 or $600 million dollars, by the way, not billion, but $1 million a year. Okay, probably it's a good compromise for Hungary because they need oil, right? They want to continue cooperation with Russia, by the way. Trump still continues. Trump stated that he's still open, by the way, to idea to have a meeting with the Russian president in Budapest. I don't think this meeting is happening anytime soon, but okay. And he once again stated that India stopped buying Russian oil, which is not a factually accurate statement, but okay, if he wants to believe in that, let him believe in that, by the way. Okay, and US shutdown, dear friends, meanwhile, is turned out to be more damaging for US economy than initial estimates, according to White House aid. And shutdown could actually slice 1% or 1.2, 1.5% from GDP, US GDP in October-December period. This was stated by Kevin Hassett, White House economic advisor. And if they know that this shutdown is this damaging, and it is damaging, by the way, millions and millions of people, 40 plus million citizens of US cannot get their food aid by food. I was shocked when I learned first time that 42 million people in US are receiving food as a aid. By the way, they are in such a difficult situation that they cannot afford food, that they have to take it as aid. And this shutdown makes their lives more difficult even, right? And a million government employees are without paycheck, and it is an issue for sure. It is a big issue for US. And you tell me what kind of people are in charge of US, including in Congress, in both chambers, by the way, that it's already like 6 weeks of shutdown, and they still did nothing basically to resolve their differences. Sometimes it seems they don't even try. They are playing some political games, and their tens of millions of American citizens are experiencing difficulties because of it. So you tell me, for whom those lawmakers are working? Clearly not for US citizens, isn't it? And that's about it, dear friends. That's about it for news segment. It's a long one, but hopefully you did like it. Hopefully you did liked it. And let me join now community chat finally. Please click that like button if you can and leave some commentary, and let's have a little chat now. There was a $30 donation, dear friends, through PayPal. From Dominic. There was a $30 donation on PayPal, and the comment is thank you, Levan, for all your hard work, and thank you very much, Dominic, for your donation. So and the kind words, and we did open the score in a fundraising. This is only donation for now, right? If anybody don't want, sir, me to mention the name, I don't say no. I never say full name. I only say first name. But if you don't want me to mention even first name, no issues. Just leave commentary in the PayPal. No mentionings or something like. Just let me know not to say your name, and that will be it. So yes, dear friends, we opened fundraising, $30 in. Thank you very much, Dominic. There was no super chat for now, unfortunately, on Rumble. But yes, dear friends, let me just remind you before I join community chat that you can donate through several means. Task usually during these fundraisings are to reach $200. Only twice we managed to do so, but maybe we will today. I don't know. So you can use our PayPal platform to donate. Link is under this video in the description box. As it is the case for Boosty platform, you can subscribe to my Patreon page and the Boosty page. Of course, everything counts for support and helps great deal, by the way, to stay focused on this project. And there is a crypto wallet also, and while I'm online, there is this super chat feature or rant feature on Rumble, and you can become premium subscriber too, by the way, or you can gift premium subscription to other member of their community. Everything counts, of course. And now let me join community chat. I will start from the beginning, dear friends. So I see comments straight away from Nikos. Levan, for your own health, don't get upset and depressed whenever some tiny state like Belgium says something bad about Russia. That's all they know to do, and nothing will change that. I accept, I fully take your recommendation. I should, yes. Recently, when I was talking about Belgium and their threats to obliterate Moscow and that kind of stuff, I get little upset. Yes, I went off rail a little bit. But you know, dear friends, whenever I go off road, let's say, I myself hate that, but time to time it does happens. We all are humans, isn't it? And also Nikos is commenting, Nikoskin, that's sad if NATO uses those 800,000 troops, then be angry and support your country even if it leads to the world to end. I said it before, if they send me to Ukraine, I defect to Russia. That will be, I mean, let's hope Greek not going to send its troops against Russia. Let's hope. But if they comes when NATO troops are facing our troops, definitely will be best decision for NATO troops to just lay down arms and surrender, man, because that fight not going to end well for NATO troops, man. Also, MCDM 007 is commenting, do NATO has 800,000 troops? They do actually. They can, European NATO member states can pull out at any given point, not any given point, but if they have if they make decision, NATO countries, European NATO countries, can deploy something around 500 to 800,000 troops. Yes. Combat readiness of those troops is questionable, of course, big time questionable, but they can pull off such numbers. Of course, we are not counting Turkey and the US. Turkey and US alone have a million plus armies, right? But when it comes to Europe, yes, they have tiny armies relative to others, but together they can pull out such a number, yeah. And again, their combat capabilities gonna be questionable for sure, but and there was the friends super chat right now on Rumble. Let me highlight, if I may, super chat from Dead Reckoning, and there is a comment. So I will highlight this right now. Whenever there is a super chat or question from support platforms, I will, of course, highlight those first, and then I will continue with questions that I see in the chat. And Dead Reckoning, thank you very much for $5 donation and super chat on Rumble. And comment from Dead Reckoning is the US is boycotting the G20 summit in South Africa. What are your thoughts on this? Are you critical of the South African government? And well, you know what? When it comes to first part of your question, I think it's a mistake, of course, on part of US. Trump might ignore the summit, but he should send some delegation, because this is disrespect not just towards South Africa, but disrespect to other members of this G20 organization, right? G20 summit. So it's a mistake. Obviously, it's a mistake. There is nothing really to even discuss there. When it comes to South African government, by the way, I have read quite a number of messages from members of our community from, let's say, both sides of aisle there. And some members did send me quite a volume of information that white farmers actually being harassed, by the way. And because I don't live there, it is difficult for me to say. But if white farmers actually being harassed, and I also have received other opinions too, that basically some white farmers might actually lost their land, but land that was belonging to locals before European settlers went in, right? So they have this justification that tens and hundreds of families lost everything, right? And their descendants do have a right now for this land because this land was stolen from them. So you can see logic there too. And these people, these descendants of those people from whom whiter colonialists took the land, they should either receive land back or compensation to make it somehow, to resolve the issue, let's say, right? But of course, if white farmers being harassed, and you know what, I don't even want this language, white farmers, not white farmers. There is no white freaking race, man. There is an Indo-European race, right? I don't know why in the West this language being adopted. Is it white people and white race? Am I white enough? Am I white people, or who am I? Because some inadequates, by the way, call us people from Southern Caucasus blacks. Do you know that? Some inadequates. Thanks God there is a few such crazies, but they do call us black people. You might laugh at this, but yeah. So am I white enough by European standards or not white enough? This is crazy. I hate this language, man. Why racism has to be everywhere, in every conversation, on the topics that are related to West directly or indirectly. But anyways, if Indo-European farmers or whomever, by the way, is harassed and if they've been treated unlawfully, of course, I will criticize for that South African government or any other government, by the way. And we should also keep in mind what happened with Zimbabwe, right? That was an example when government went on a wrong way. They took land from Indo-European farmers, let's say, descendants of the Indo-European colonialists, right? European settlers. And as a result, there was a famine in Zimbabwe, right? And the country still suffers, by the way, a great deal to nowadays. And I don't want South Africa to do the same. So if there is a land that was taken by European settlers from locals, to make sure that you are not destroying livelihoods of these farmers, because those Indo-European farmers, descendants of European settlers, didn't took nothing from nobody, right? They are just doing their business. They have farms. They are giving job to, God knows, maybe to thousands of people. They are paying taxes. They are helping economy of South Africa, right? So don't take no land from them, and just compensate descendants of those families that lost this land some time ago. Just compensate them some other way. Give them a land in some other place. Is this a possibility? Maybe this is the way to go forward, because yet again, I cannot support in collective punishment, man. Right? And if current farmers did not do no wrong, man, they should be protected, right? But same time, of course, justice has to be served, and those families that lost land when Boers and all the other European settlements entered South Africa, they have to be compensated some other way. So that's my take on that. Of course, I'm not an expert in South Africa, by the way, and country is in decline. Let's be real here. This internal chaos is not helping South Africa. This country was a nuclear power at one point, right? And it had a great deal of military-industrial complex and stuff, economy, and Johannesburg, by the way, was and hopefully still is one of the most modern cities out there. And when I see reports about some high crime in South Africa, some decline in this field and that field. It saddens me, man. Right? I want all the best for South Africa and the people of South Africa, of all the races. Yet again, I hate when topics, especially when it's related to the West one way or another, when those topics usually always come down to race, man. I hate that. We are operating other way in this part of the world, and we very rarely talk about race at all, right? But yeah, so that's my answer. That I don't know if my answer is informative enough, good enough, but if farmers being harassed by government unlawfully, of course I will criticize that 100%. If situation is different, yet again, I want justice to be served, man, and that's it. And there was also a super chat, dear friends. Thank you very much, Dead Reckoning, for super chat and important question on important topic. Unfortunately, I'm not an expert in this field, and I know about South Africa very little, really. And I mentioned that South Africa used to be a nuclear power, isn't it? This is the only country that actually get rid of nukes. It's the only country in human history that actually had the nukes and get rid of it. And there was also a super chat, dear friends. There was a super chat also from Magwar Bangar. And my apologies if I'm mispronouncing the nicknames, dear friends. And let me highlight this super chat from Rumble 2. So Magwaro Banger, thank you very much for your super chat and dollar donation. And with love from Wales, comment is thank you very much and the best of luck to you and to everybody in Wales. Unfortunately, when I was living in UK, and I did spend quite a few years there, isn't it? I was young and stupid, by the way. I was young and stupid. I was a student. And I did not use this opportunity to travel around as much as I could. I did travel a little bit, right? But I did not use this opportunity to travel well enough all the way up and down of Ireland. And I regret that now. I should go to Wales, by the way. I should go to Scotland, man. You know, I was planning to go to Ireland, Northern Ireland, and of course, to go to Northern Ireland, you have to go through whole island almost, like not to Welsh itself, but because Welsh is on the south, isn't it? But I didn't, because yet again, that's what you do when you are young and stupid, man. You think, oh, tomorrow, day after tomorrow, you know, and eventually I didn't. I did travel though a little. And I have great memories from UK, and that's why I always say, don't take my criticism of Western elites or British elites, political elites, as a criticism of society, because I'm never gonna say nothing negative about people of UK, man. I know people, I met them, I spoke with them, I work with them, study with them, great people, man. Great people, and that's my experience, right? So I'm always talking about these freaking elites that are making life of ordinary people like us miserable, right? Or trying hard to do so. But I have no issues with no people, man. So thank you very much for your super chat and $10 donation. Yet again, best of luck to you and to everybody in Wales and England and Scotland and Northern Ireland, by the way, all over the UK. You are great people, man. I love the time that I spent there. Those years was nice. Only regret I have, why I was that stupid, man. But, you know. I should travel all over their places, man. I had the opportunity, when you have opportunity to do it, just do it, man. So many nice places, historical places that you can see, more people you can meet. But yeah, maybe sometime in the future, if situation will normalize, I would love to take my family for maybe like week trip. A week is, maybe not enough. 2 weeks will do, I guess, to travel around UK. Who knows, man? Who knows? Let's continue. Meanwhile, with the chat, and Nikos is also commenting. Did you see Maria Zakharova's response to Vucic? This is a reflection of the Moscow's government being done with Serbia. I've been saying it for a while now. Vucic is weak and he has lost control. But I have seen Maria Zakharova's comment. Yes, I have seen Vucic's comment also. Vucic's response on Maria Zakharova's comment. And well, what can I say? This was coming, isn't it? This was coming. A Russian Foreign Intelligence Service twice made statements about involvement of Serbian military-industrial complex in arming Kiev regime, and this could not go down well with Russian side, obviously, right? And Moscow tried to resolve the situation on a friendly basis, as it should be done. Vucic did not really care about it, clearly. And okay, then, what we gonna do? Our attitude towards Serbian people never gonna change, by the way. Serbian people are our brothers and sisters. It's gonna stay this way forever. But these Western-controlled regimes in Serbia, by the way, current one or future one, and most likely future one gonna be globalist control too, they're not gonna do no good for relationships between the two countries. Attitude towards each other between the people, and I'm quite sure majority of Serbian people have a friendly attitude towards Russians, right? I'm convinced in that, and same is here. But relationships between governments, of course, is a different story. And yeah, Moscow is down with Vucic, but that's for sure. Moscow is down with Vucic, man. He is too weak. He wants to sit on several chairs simultaneously. He wants to please Brussels. He wants to please Washington. He wants to please everybody while forgetting about his own people, that he works for his own people and best interest of the Serbian people, right? And he's forgetting that. And that's the most serious issue. And, let's hope Serbian people will regain control over their country, because these Western-controlled regimes doing no good for Serbia. Tell me what good Vucic's government, which is Western-controlled regime, by the way, what good they did to Serbia. Only reason why globalists are not happy with Vucic is that he is not recognizing Kosovo and not openly confronting Bosnian Serbs, although, by the way, Belgrade is also not really helping Bosnian Serbs much, right? Also true. So, George is commenting. George is commenting, what about 800,000 Russian troops close to US borders? How will they feel? Well, they're not going to feel good, by the way, for sure. Not just due to theoretical presence of any Russian troops close to US borders, let's say from south or the north. We should keep in mind, by the way, that Russia and US are neighbors, right? We are bordering each other on the Far East, correct? But whenever there is discussion about what US will feel if Russia will put troops here and there, it's always Mexico and Canada that is being kept in mind, right? If Russia will put troops in Mexico, if Russia will put troops in Canada, how will US feel? And yes, they're not going to feel good, right? They're not going to feel good even if Russia will deploy Oreshnik missile systems in Venezuela, for example. And one of the Russian MPs recently actually stated that Russia might deploy Oreshniks to Venezuela. I don't think Russia going to do it, but such a calls being made in the parliament, right? Such statements. Yeah, US not going to be happy about it, right? And one would expect then US will not do to Russia what it would not like to see Russia doing against it, but Washington don't think this far. Current political class in US, in the West, basically, is quite a primitive one, isn't it? And when I say primitive, I actually mean that. I mean, they are truly primitives, very primitives, right? You cannot have an intelligence conversation with vast majority of the representatives of the modern West, Western so-called elites, man. I mean, what kind of intellectual dialogue, conversation you're gonna have with a Trump? I mean, truly, honestly. I mean, you might have a casual talk about golf, I guess. Woman, he was a big womanizer, isn't it? Golf, woman, what else? That's it, man. You might have you might be able to maintain some primitive conversation with Trump on just these primitive topics. And that's it. Because it's a primitive, isn't it? What you're going to talk about golf, man? Sport itself is not primitive, obviously. Some like this game, some don't see it as being a sport. Who cares? Maybe there is a lot to talk about golf, but is it a high intellectual conversation? Of course, there is a lot to talk about women, and Trump is known to be womanizer. There is videos, isn't it, when Trump and Epstein are in a room with plenty of young females, and many questions have been raised in regards to Trump and his connection with Epstein, isn't it? And about cover-up of Epstein files and stuff. But yet again, I mean, there is a lot to talk about women, but usually, it's not an intellectual conversation because, it's a primitive conversation. When two guys get together and talk about women, it's never really high intellectual conversation. You're not talking about some top physicist, top woman physicist, Curie, for example, right? That was in the beginning of all this nuclear topic that we know among pioneers in the field, right? Usually, when two guys talk about a woman, it's very primitive talk, man, and that's the only level you can have of conversation with Trump. I mean, really primitive one. Take Europe, by the way. What kind of conversation you're going to have with European so-called elites? With Kaja Kallas, let's say. I mean, really, what you're going to talk about with Kaja Kallas? I mean, absolute moron, right? Probably did not read their 2 books in her life, most likely. And I'm not joking, man. Right? What you're going to talk with Macron about? I mean, total primitive, right? Stammer? Total primitive, man. You beyond some basic conversation, you cannot be able to go because they have no depth in them, right? This is our freaking puppets that were put in a place by puppeteers, right? And they are pulling the strings, and that's all, man. And even when it comes to globalists themselves, by the way, those puppeteers, I don't know who, maybe by name, who they are, but they are quite primitive too. They're supposed to be primitive because of their policies. That's how it is. Anyways, let's continue, man. And when I say, by the way, that they are primitives, can you imagine what will, highly intellectual, mega educated people will say? I am average, right? I am average guy, man, here in Russia or post-Soviet Union. I'm not extremely educated. I do have some education, some knowledge. That's about it, right? I'm average. So can you imagine what actual, clever people, super clever people, gonna think about Western elites if they are primitive to me, man? That's how it is. And we love education here in this part of the world, by the way. We love education, we respect education, and that's why there is a great number of highly educated people everywhere, man. Everywhere. You're gonna, it's an anecdote, isn't it? You go into metro, for example, and nowadays it's not actual paper books, but before it used to be paper books. Almost every second person using this time of travel, either in a bus or in a tram or on a metro, to read some books, right? Constantly. Now it's phones or the tablets, right? And still people continue to use every opportunity to read some more about everything. More you know, better. That's how we've been raised, right? That, you learn all your life. But Western elites, they are different. And they get everything without any work. And so they don't value no education, no nothing. They are just freaking primitives, man. Keir Starmer, man, hated by everybody in UK, right? I don't know what is his rating nowadays, like 10-15%, maybe, right? Macron is the same. Scholz is the same, by the way. How big disappointment is Giorgia Meloni, man? I don't think anybody think about her that she is a freaking intellectual, but at least people were thinking that she's gonna be like focused on Italy more. And sometimes even nowadays she does make some fiery speech about Italy and what has to be done and this and that. But she is a prime minister. Do it. No. So I see question. Nikos also, dear friends, if of course you can send question through or the comment, by the way, through Rumble Super Chat or Rant as it's called there. Or you can use other support platforms, PayPal or Boosty, or at least as Nikos did right now, use capital letters in the chat if you have a question, so that I will notice a little easier, because I'm scrolling fast, by the way, through chat. And if I spot it, I spot it. If not, then sorry. And Nikos is commenting, Levan, do you know of hospitals in Russia being flooded by wounded or dead? I am not talking just about Moscow. I just like to confirm hospital much Doctorow is saying is nonsense. I don't know. Last time I saw a video from Doctorow he was a guest on Daniel Davis's show, I believe, like 2 weeks ago or something. Since then, I don't know. Maybe he made some statements yesterday or day before yesterday. I have not seen that, and therefore I cannot comment what Doctorow says. Professor Doctorow, right? But when it comes to hospitals, by the way, I have been in a hospital to see my wounded relative, right? and there was quite a number of wounded militaries. That's what hospitals are for, actually. I mean, it's a hospital, and it's a wounded military personnel there being treated, right? One of my relatives were wounded some time ago on line of contact. He was, all I can say is he was head of DRG, right? DRG is a basically military intelligence group that goes beyond enemy lines, and there is different operational tasks, right? And this group that was commanded by my relative, they end up in a firefight, in a close range shootout, and with a big number of hostile troops, they come up on top of during that fight, but they lost one member of the unit, and several were wounded, including my relative. And I went to see him in a hospital in the Moscow region, by the way. And there was I would not say it's like overwhelmed or something. That's what I saw with my own eyes, by the way. You're not gonna see wounded military personnel in the corridors of the hospital. It's rooms, isn't it, where you go in, and it's all depends, isn't it? There are different levels of injury, and you go in a room, and there are several wounded military personnel in a room, right? They've been looked after. Obviously, it's not just relatives that, of course, are there, but administration itself, they've been looked after. And Russian military medicine is on quite high level, obviously, and there was no overwhelming number of wounded military personnel, but they were there, obviously, right? There were military personnel. What was noticeable, by the way, I did not see that many militaries with their lost limbs. That was my expectation, that before I went inside the building, that there are going to be many military personnel that lost their hands or legs. And I saw several, but not that many. And that once again tells you high level of military medicine in Russian army, right? Because wounded military is being supported in such a way that they are not losing their hands and feet on a rate that Kiev regime's military does, because on Kiev regime's side, it's a hell. It's a hell what is going on there, by the way. Doctors, according to reports that I see in many cases, doctors are not even trying to save their heads or the legs of the wounded military. They are just amputating straight away, which is crazy, man, which is absolutely crazy. My relative was injured in the head, and he had shrapnel injuries in the leg too, and he was saved. He was saved by medics, but he was injured in the head, man. It was ricochet, most likely. He was just very lucky. It was a ricochet, by the way, and the bullet did not kill him. It did not manage to penetrate the skull, right? Otherwise, of course, the chances of survival would be none, but most likely. But he was lucky, and so yes, that's what I saw with my own eyes. There were, of course, wounded military personnel, but hospital was not overwhelmed. You're not gonna. I did not see wounded military personnel in the corridors or something. No, it's all civil. It's all done normally, but there is a high number of wounded military personnel, obviously, by the way, right? Obviously, I cannot tell you exact numbers, but we are talking about thousands of military personnel being wounded potentially on a monthly basis, right? So if Professor Doctorow said that there is a high number of wounded military personnel in a hospital, he was not lying. He's not lying in that case. Of course, there is a. I mean, then you may start argue what is the high number for you, right? And well, any number is a high, isn't it? But well, hospitals are working, man, and they are very busy. Unfortunately, there are a lot of casualties, not just on the Kiev regime side, but on the Russian side too. And thanks God, Russian doctors are this good, and they are saving so many people, lives of so many people, man. So, I can see you being somewhat critical of Professor Doctor, but yet again, I mean, if he said that, I mean, there are high number of wounded personnel in hospitals, he is not lying. Of course, there is a high number. We are engaged in high intensity conflict. How otherwise? What do you think? We are having no casualties? Of course we do, man. So I'm not going to criticize nobody for no reason, man. Nidish Kumar is commenting, Levon, they can't arm 800,000 troops, no chance. I doubt that they will have enough vests. Oh, Nidish, they have under the arms right now. They have armed million plus military personnel right now in Europe. We are talking about several dozen of countries, right? From Romania and Poland. Okay, let's ignore Slovakia and Hungary. That would most likely would not participate militarily, right? And let's ignore Turkey and the US, that also have million plus troops each. From Romania to UK, by the way. From Romania to UK, if you count all NATO member states, they have about 2 million military personnel, at least on the paper. Those military personnel is armed, equipped, they have everything. They should have everything, right? So technically speaking, NATO can deploy, Europe can deploy 800,000 troops. I have no doubts about it. What I have doubt about is combat readiness of these troops, because I think these 800,000 troops will be extremely poorly trained and extremely low, with extremely low battle capabilities. That's what I think. So therefore, yes, they can come up with these numbers, but they're not going to be able to turn the tide because, come on, man. European states have no armies, man, have no battle-capable armies. It's UK and France, isn't it, that being counted as the toughest military countries in among the European NATO member states, and none of them have an actual army, man, capable armies. It's a freaking joke, man. Only reason why Moscow will take cautiously military aggression, potential open military aggression with their France and UK is because the nukes. They have nukes. That's the only reason why we will be serious about it, right? Otherwise, take British army. It's like actual troops are, I don't know, from 50 to 80,000, let's say. 80,000 British troops, 80,000 troops of Kiev regime. You think which ones are more battle capable? And Kiev regime is operating currently, right now, from 5 to 800,000 troops, right? Battle hardened troops. So take 80,000 troops from Kiev regime, 80,000 British troops. Which one is more capable, you think? Of course, Kiev regime's troops, man. They're gonna, if they will fight each other, Kiev regime's troops will nullify British army in matter of, I don't know, in matter of weeks probably. And same story with the French army. Only reason why they will be taken seriously if it actually comes to direct open confrontation is because they have nukes, and that's something that you cannot ignore. Otherwise, from conventional military standpoint, France and UK is a freaking joke, man. Their armies, it's a joke. Nothing to be said about all the others, man. It's a freaking joke, man. They can come up with the numbers. That's not really question. I think that they can come up with these numbers, but Elaine, there was donation, dear friends, right now from through PayPal, and Elaine, let me thank you for your support and attention, and $20 donation. Thank you very much. And comment from Elaine is thanks, Levan. Thank you, Elaine. Thank you. And now in terms of fundraising, we reached 65, by the way, out of 200, which is the task of this live stream fundraising streams or community chatter fundraising streams, is to reach 200, so that next week I'll be little less stressful to be focused on this worker. So we reached 65. Thank you all, dear friends, for that. Past week was quite weak in terms of donations during the weekdays, and fundraising from last Sunday definitely helped, man. Definitely helped. So thank you all, dear friends, for keeping me in this field of news and political commentary. And I'm scrolling. I'm gonna go a little faster. It's already 3 hours. So also Nikos is commenting, Levan, don't you think Russia's so-called allies are hypocrites? They condemned their SMO all this time, and now they stopped buying oil like India did, and Serbia sent support. What support you expect? Well, India did not stop buying Russian oil, actually. I know Trump is talking about it big time, but and Western media also reported that India stopped buying Russian oil. There are some indicators that one ways of oil supply was changed by other ways, right? So oil is still going into India, in the Indian refineries, right? In any case, by the way, if New Delhi would not be able to withstand pressure from Washington, and if New Delhi will actually issue order for state-run refineries or state-run energy companies to stop cooperate with the Russian energy sector, even if private energy companies will stop buying oil, I don't think that will influence anyway, really, friendly relationships between Russia and India. I mean anyway. I don't think this will influence these relationships negatively. Many people here in Russia will be sorry, of course, but sorry for India that it was unable to withstand pressure from the West for now. But with help of Russia, with help of other allies, one day India hopefully will be in a position to stand strong against Western pressure, right? In any circumstances. So that's the one topic, right? And Russia continues to sell oil, by the way, right? Russia continues to sell oil. West comes up with their sanctions. Russia and Russian allies will come up with the ways to deal with these sanctions, right? Continue doing business anyways. So that's how it is, right? So there is no issue between Moscow and New Delhi, by the way. Russia and India are strategical partners, and it will be this way because it's natural, by the way. We always had good relationships, right? And whenever one of the countries are in trouble, it's a time to be supportive, not a time to turn your back on your friend, right? And we are friends, I believe. We are good friends with India, and they are supportive of Russia, and Russia going to be supportive of India. And I just reported in a news segment that there is a close cooperation, and there are good prospects to further enhance military cooperation between military-industrial complex, weapons technology transfer, and so on. Also, when it comes to civilian aviation, by the way, the sites are very close to actually finalize all the necessary agreements to launch a production of civilian aircrafts in India, right? A Russian superjet, for example, for the beginning, but eventually other type of aircrafts might be launched too. So we are good, man. We are good. It's okay. When it comes to Serbia, well, Vučić, by the way, Vučić is a Western candidate. I don't know why anybody was thinking that Vučić is a pro-Serbian or Serbian patriot or something. He is a Western candidate. Current regime is a product of regime change, right? Color revolution. Isn't it? So I never had no illusions in regards to Vučić, by the way, and his government. So therefore, I'm not at all surprised that Serbian military-industrial complex was participating in weapons supplies, right? In some schemes to supply weapons and ammunition to Kiev regime. It's unfortunate, obviously, very unfortunate. But yet again, this will not influence relationships with the Serbian people. Regimes come and go. People are there to stay, right? And Serbians are our brothers and sisters, and that's how we see them. That's how they see us, right? It's not going to change. Vučić, okay, I mean, he's a weak man. He's a weak man, literally weak man, right? And if you keep in mind under what pressure Serbia went alone for how many decades now, I mean, you will understand that it's not easy. It's not easy to be, basically encircled by hostile forces and stand strong. But Serbian people are standing strong, man. Serbian people, not just in Serbia, but in Republic of Srpska, also in Kosovo, by the way. That is part of Serbia, of course, so no hard feelings there, man. I mean, we should distinguish. Regime is regime, man. Governments come and go. People are there, and Serbia always will be a Russian friend and ally. I think so. So I don't think they are, political elites among Russian allies, in some sense, can be called Hypocrites. But I would not go as far as other regions. I will say it about Russian allies from CSTO organization, right? CSTO is a military alliance, and Russia was attacked, by the way, directly in the Kursk region, right? Some might say, well, operations on new Russian regions, on territory of new Russian regions, is a little different. Those countries did not yet acknowledge that these territories are Russian, and therefore they cannot participate in the operations there. But Kiev regime and NATO mercenaries entered the Kursk region, isn't it? Some time ago, and it took quite a few months for Russian forces to completely liberate the territory. And I think it was a betrayal on part of CSTO members when they did not provide military contingents, as North Korea did, by the way. That is not a member of the CSTO, but North Korea actually sent its troops to participate in operations in Kursk salient. But CSTO countries did not. And that's why I'm questioning this organization. Do we really need CSTO to exist, really? If it does not benefit Russia, clearly. Only other members of the CSTO. So why we are paying for the security of these countries, man? It's a question, very question that many Americans are asking themselves. Why are we, financing security of European states, man, that are quite rich, actually, used to be at least? I have the same question in regards to CSTO. Why we are paying for security of these other countries when they did not even send a single battalion to help Russia deal with this invading force in the Kursk salient? So if it comes to hypocrisy, I will say, yes, there is a hypocrisy among CSTO member state leadership, for sure, 100%. And I'm quite critical of those governments and their CSTO itself. It's absolutely unnecessary organization, by the way. It means nothing. It literally means nothing, man. Russian territory was attacked, and none of those countries, even if Russia didn't ask, those countries should say it openly that we are ready to provide military contingent on your call. None of them said it, man. None of them, right? So that's quite something to keep in mind. And of course, then when it comes to allies, by the way, I mean, other allies, I would like to see unification of the Russian allies outside of the Western world, and declaration that Western elites, we are fighting Western elites, Western ruling class is an evil force. This has to be declared. This is not just a simple words, by the way. Western elites actually are evil force. I really believe in that they are evil force, right? They are not a good human beings, by the way. They are bad human beings, right? That don't want good for nobody. And I think we all have to unite to fight this evil force that Western class is. And in this regard, it is upsetting that all the Russian allies are not this vocal to confront this evil force, right? And it's yet again, it's not just an actual military confrontation, and it's a spiritual confrontation also, by the way. We should not forget about this. It's a spiritual confrontation, true. And good force is fighting evil force. And I think we need all the support of all the allies, right, to defeat this evil force. So in this regard, I can call all the governments of allied countries to be somewhat cowards, because they are not confronting this evil force, man, this openly, right? They do, yes, in some ways, but we have to do it openly. We have to just say it, man. Say it openly that this is evil freaking force. We have to defeat it, man. Otherwise, they will put humanity under the risk of extinction. Let's say it as it is, man. So maybe we are, getting to that point. Maybe those elites among ruling elites among Russian allies maybe did not yet had enough of their Western elites, but they will at some point, right? But of course, I would prefer our Russian allies to be more proactive, of course. Let's scroll, dear friends, and my apologies, dear friends, if I'm gonna miss your question. I'm scrolling fast, and if I spot capital Q or capital letters, there is a higher chances that I will spot it. It's already like 3 hours and 13 minutes, and I don't really want to do another record. By the way, 2 weeks ago we had a record live stream with 4-hour length, right? I see a comment from Kate Fellers. US can't beat Russia, can't beat China or India for that matter. So now they go after South Africa or South America. Yes, in some sense, yes, Kate, I have to agree with you. Neocons are never going to change, isn't it? And neocons are in charge there. I mean, Rubio is a Secretary of the State, right? And in addition, National Security Advisor. These positions give him tremendous powers. And yes, they are going after South America. Venezuela might be first, Colombia, Cuba, by the way. They want to go after Cuba. I'm 100% convinced in that. Maybe all this build-up of military force, of course, of Venezuela is actually will be directed on Cuba. Maybe they are using Venezuela as a deception and in reality they want to go after Cuba. Is it a possibility? Maybe. Or maybe they will just go one by one. Venezuela, Colombia, Cuba, they want to go after Nicaragua, after Bolivia, after everybody, after Brazil, brother. Right? US leadership is quite hostile against Brazil, literally against everybody. At this point, only government that US is kind of allying with is from more or less big countries in Latin America is Argentina, right? That's it, man. That's the only ally from more or less regional powers that US has, Argentina, Milei's regime. Rest is either not as powerful as or significant militarily as some bigger countries, or are opposing the US. So yes, they are going after Latin America big time. But yet again, I mean, if people will fight, if people of Venezuela will fight, I don't think US militaries are actually capable of defeating people of Venezuela. I don't think any military is capable of defeating or conquering Venezuelan people or people of any other country, by the way, right? It's a different times, man. It's not times of conquistadors, right? You're not going to go in and occupy the land and enslave everybody there. No. If people are going to fight, then they will come up on top. Yes, they will suffer casualties, but any fight for independence is a bloody fight, of course. If people not going to fight, that's a different story. In that case, of course, for US, it's not going to be a big deal to overthrow Maduro's regime, for example, or any other regime for that matter. I mean, if people not standing for their country, not the government necessarily, but for the country and their own independence, then to overthrow governments, it's not really big deal for US. And they are experts in that, right? So... I see also a question from Nikoski in Levant. Tell me if you disagree, but I can't stand this new leader of Kazakhstan. Putin sent support to stabilize his government, and this guy has turned off Russia because of Ukraine. What a coward. Oh, I don't like Tokayev too, by the way. I never liked the guy. He's like Vucic in some ways, he's also trying to sit on several chairs. He wants to have a sort of good working relationships with Russia, with China, by the way. He spent years working in China, right? So he's well known in Beijing, and he wants also to have a good relationships with Brussels or European powers, including London, main driving force behind the globalists, and also with the US. And this never works, man. This kind of policies never really works for a long, right? That's why I think he's weak, man. His government is very weak, right? And that's why I think there is a high risk that West will manage to destabilize Kazakhstan and a number of other republics there in the Central Asia when they will think time is right. They are too weak, man. Tokayev's regime is just too freaking weak, man. Seems like they have no clear vision what to do, where they are standing, where Kazakhstan is in 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now. And when they have no such a vision, they are trying to play all games, right, with everybody. And It's not gonna end well, man. I'm afraid. Let's hope I'm wrong in my reading on the big picture, but you know, and Kazakhstan is not alone. There is other governments in Central Asia that are also very weak. You see videos of meeting of these leaders of the Central Asian Republic with the Trump. They were sucking it up, man. It was so freaking embarrassing to watch, man. It should be embarrassing, especially for the people of those republics, man. When their leaders are sitting right next to Trump and acting this freaking prizing Trump as if he's some kind of freaking god, man. Fuck's sake. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing, man. So I don't like this guy, Tokayev. What can I say, man? I don't think he has any vision about Kazakhstan, where his country is in 10, 20, 30 years time from now. Otherwise, if he had a vision, clear vision, then his policies would be much more serious than it is right now. He is like Vucic, I'm telling you. He's a Central Asian Vucic, that guy. And you are correct, Nikos. Russia went in, and only successful operation that I can remember on behalf of the CSTO was exactly that operation when Russia, Belarus, number of other countries. It was mainly Russia and Belarus, but I believe either Tajikistan or Uzbekistan also participated. Some of them from there, Central Asia, also sent the troops to stabilize the situation in Kazakhstan, right? Only successful operation on behalf of CSTO, man. You know, and even though this Tokayev is in power only thanks to this rapid reaction of Moscow and there are some other capitals from former Soviet republics, he's still playing the games, man. And it's just too bad. He's gonna come, man. Tokayev gonna come in Russia in next several, in short, right, on a state visit, and I don't know. Maybe Moscow and Astana will resolve some issues that needs to be addressed. Let's see. Oh, really? Kate. Kate is commenting that Macron's main wife slapped the hell out of him again. Really, I missed that. I did not saw any reports on that. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, that couple. I hate to use even that word, man. Even if it's weird stuff, man. Macron is clearly mentally ill, isn't it? He really is, man. In any case, he's mentally ill. Should be treated by doctors, man. Definitely should not be president of France. But West is in some, I don't know, man. West is in a dark place right now, Western world, because so much crap is happening there that all we can say outside of the Western world is, why and how, man? What the hell? How this is even be, but half of the Western world is in this freaking LGBTQ community or experiencing some gender dysphoria. And another half is going crazy while watching all this nonsense, right? And they probably are wondering what to do, where to fucking, sorry my language, but run, where to run. It's a mess, man. Western world is a big mess now, isn't it? I'm telling you, if me, my family, and if we were living in any Western country, by the way, right? maybe with the exception of Hungary, let's say, because in Hungary, it's a traditions and everything is preserved. Normality is preserved, right? As much as possible. I think that's impression. I never been in Hungary, but I think that's what is the case there. But in other countries, man, if we were living, if we were citizens of, I don't know, France or Germany or I don't know, Spain or UK or US or Canada for that matter, probably we will let them migrate, man. I will definitely talk to my family about migration, man, to some other country. And well, if it comes to migration, I think Russia is for Westerners, because there is many similarities culturally and historically and so on. Yes, I would consider Russia as a destination to migrate, for sure. Most difficult when it comes to coming to Russia, most difficult stuff is language. I mean, bureaucracy, of course. Bureaucracy is a hell of an experience in every country, obviously. There is no good bureaucracies. I don't think good bureaucracy exists anywhere, but people are migrating to Russia, coming here in thousands, right, from Western countries. And most difficult, from what I have seen from their videos, is language, man. I don't know why, but Russian language seems to be difficult to learn for them. It's a beautiful language, man. What is difficult about it? I don't know. It's a wonderful language, man, and very deep language. I mean, when you read some classics, by the way, in Russian, it's unbelievable stuff, right? But yeah, somehow Russian language is Westerners are finding to be very difficult to learn. I don't know. I can't even remember how I learned Russian. Probably I learned Russian together with Georgian and Ossetian when I was like little kid. Because I actually cannot remember. I know how I learned English. I know that. But how I learned Russian, I don't remember. As I don't remember how I learned Georgian or Ossetian. I see question from Nidish Kumar. Levan, Madagascar is done by coup and Tanzania is under process. Do you think US want firm control over the Indian Ocean? That's what I think, looking at the map. Even Indonesia protests. Oh, of course. Of course. US wants not necessarily to control. They cannot control Indian Ocean, by the way. They know this. What they do want is to destabilize, to make it unsafe, basically. So that if US cannot control it, if West cannot control these certain areas, then China would not be in control too. They are failing in a competition with China, right? And that's their strategy. If it's not ours, then you will not have it either. That's Western approach. And they are now destabilizing. They are very focused on destabilization of entire regions in Africa and in Indian Ocean, in the Oceania too. That's what Indonesian uprising was. That's what, not uprising, but these disturbances in Indonesia. They want, Western elites want to destabilize whole field now, right? Because they are in no position to compete with China. They just cannot, right? And that's why US is attacking Nigeria, one of the reasons. It's a part of destabilization now of whole regions, whole continents, right? To somehow weaken the China. That's what is happening, man. And I said, well, do you think why I was saying for how long now that Northern Maritime Sea Route, off coast of Russian North, is going to become a major trade route for the world. I was saying this exactly, one of the reasons why I was saying this, exactly that while West will lose competition with China, they will go ahead with some extreme measures. And one of the ways they will act is to destabilize whole regions, by the way, whole of Africa, whole of Indian Ocean, whole of Oceania, right? And where these main routes are now, right now, maritime routes, exactly there, man. We say Africa, we say Middle East, it's of course Red Sea and the Suez Channel, right? When we say Indian Ocean and the Global South or Oceania, it's main routes, by the way, go through Philippines, somewhere there, isn't it? That China is using, for example. All trade routes, major trade routes, go through Malacca Strait or whatever it is, right? So they're going to destabilize everything. They're going to destabilize everything, and Northern Sea Route will ultimately become a main maritime route. It's a matter of 5-7 years, maybe. That's it. So I agree with you absolutely in this. It's a part of a Western strategy to, not to necessarily establish firm control, because they cannot control. They already lost that battle. But to destabilize so that China would not be presented their turn, at least in a strong way, right? That's what they do. I think so, and clearly there is a patterns, right? So that's how I read the big picture, at least. There was a terrorist attack in Indonesia, literally like yesterday or day before, right? You think those terrorist groups are coming from where? It's a CIA, man. CIA and MI6, man. That's all the absolute majority of terrorist organizations are linked to CIA and MI6, man. Absolute majority. Jonas Smith is commenting. USS Liberty was attacked by Israel in 1967, not 60. Yes, absolutely correct. That young man just maybe he said in 60s, but yes, factually, of course, it was 1967 when Israel attacked USS Liberty. It was not 60, but nevertheless, that young man that was giving a question to Trump's son, definitely had a point, isn't it? That there is just too much of this outside influence on U.S. politics. First of all, from Israel, it's just factual. There is no way around it, right? It's factual, and it's not normal. It's just not normal. And more and more young people in US gonna question all the narratives that they are hearing from their leadership, from their political leadership. So 45 people are watching on Rumble right now, dear friends, and there are 193 on YouTube. At some point on YouTube there was up to 300, isn't it? Yeah. So maybe some big channels have a live stream right now, and some members went to other channel. Maybe, I don't know. But our live stream is quite long, but with 3.5 hours already. So maybe I should end the live stream. When it comes to fundraising, we raised 65 out of desired 200 there. Okay, it's only twice we managed to actually raise $200 during this fundraising. So but this helps, man. This helps because some weeks, like last week, was very weak in terms of donations to the project. And this is my job, man. This is full-time job that I have. I'm looking for a part-time job that would not intervene with this job. But it's difficult to find one because all the companies that I contacted want like either full-time and not just full-time, but you should to be ready to work overtime too. And I cannot do this, man. I can allocate like 5 hours, let's say, to go somewhere, do some work, and then I have to come back and do this job. I did not find nothing yet. I was quite optimistic a few days ago because the interview went quite well, but job interview, but they did not call me there. Anyways, Nidish Kumar is also commenting. Levan, US is just a corporation, Inc. Why are you thinking it's a country taking money from interest groups to run country accordingly? Which other country does such a thing? Yes, I mean, US is a tool. US is not even a corporation. Or yes, US is a corporative fascist regime, by the way. Political system in US can be described as a corporative fascist system, right? Clearly, by the way. And it as time goes by, it will become more and more clear for everybody that it is a corporative fascist regime system that is built in. But for at least after death of Kennedy, after US President Kennedy was killed, since then US actually been transformed into basically enforcer of neocons and the globalists, right? Enforcer. That's what US was for the last, I don't know, man, 5, 6, 7 decades. And all the wars that US was engaged in was wars on behalf of some groups of interests, right? That were basically using US as their own like private military company or something, isn't it? So yes, I mean, it's not really a country in a classical sense. It's not a state. It's just a territory controlled by certain groups of forces that are good in propaganda, by the way, and in brainwashing people. And they did brainwash majority of Americans who believes in all sorts of nonsensical stuff, including how exceptional they are, by the way. I mean, which is anti-Christian, actually, to think about yourself, something like that. It goes against the core principles of Christianity. And yet, in US, this idea of being exceptional is a dominant idea, right? So, I mean, you tell me, man, what the hell is going on there? I don't know. It's definitely not a proper state, that's for sure. After all, 42 million people right now, as we speak, need assistance of the government, and the government is nowhere to be seen. Leadership, political leadership, is nowhere to be seen. They are engaged in some freaking games, political games, right? While these millions and millions of people are waiting for this government shutdown to end and to be able to receive some food aid that they need. Yet again, I'm struggling to believe how come that 42 million people in US are on food aid, but that's the numbers. That's what media is reporting about. 42 million people, by the way, receiving aid, humanitarian aid, in form of food. Crazy. And what politicians do? They are engaged in all sorts of freaking games. And that's it, man. So it's not a state, of course, in classical sense. Absolutely not. And system in US is in my personal opinion, is corporative fascist system, man. That has nothing to do with democracy or anything that Western elites love to talk about, man. It's all BS, and unfortunately they are very good in brainwashing people and PR. And many in the West are believing in any nonsense that they've been told, that they live in democracy. Oh yeah, really? Is people in UK living in democracy, man? UK not a democracy even by any means. It's a freaking monarchy, for God's sake. So how you can say we are democracy when you are a monarchy? It makes no sense whatsoever. No further explanation will do, right? You are a monarchy. You are not a democracy, therefore. Cannot be, period. But, okay, UK, man, is a France democracy. Is a France democracy, man. No, of course, France is not a democracy, man. Look what is happening with the opposition leaders in France. Marine Le Pen was banned, basically, to participate in elections, right? And despite a huge political crisis, Macron is unwilling to leave their position. And look, all these yellow jacket protests and the rest, by the way. What happened to the demands of the people? In democracy, people would be listened, right? But in alleged democracy or fake democracy, no, people would not. People's opinion would not be taken in account, and that's exactly what happened in France, for example. Take a look at Germany. Is Germany a democracy? When MPs in the parliament openly calling opposition party, whole freaking party, man, Alternative for Germany, to be Russian asset and to spy on Germany, German militaries, and so on behalf of Russia. Is this looks like a democratic country and democratic process? No, it's not. So it's all fake, man. They are good in propaganda, and they actually brainwash people in the West to believe that they are living in democracy. And if you ask Germans, majority probably will say, yeah, we are democracy. But if you actually try to dig in, and then ask additional questions, I mean, can you explain how are you democracy? Let's have a discussion. And then you will find out that, oh, actually, you know what? You might not be the democracy, man. In a way, it was represented by Western elites. But, So, dear friends, I guess we can end this live stream now. If you want to donate, yet again, if you want to participate in fundraising, I'm online for next couple of minutes. Maybe this is the time if you are considering. Or, by the way, you're more than welcome to donate to this project anytime, any day, really. It all helps. It really all helps. And from next week, I was past couple of weeks, I was just too freaking focused on finding this additional job somewhere, right? in a time frame that would not disrupt my work on this project. It did not work out, at least for now. So therefore, I'm gonna be like, I'm gonna double down on this project, I guess. And so from tomorrow, I will try to have these morning live streams at 11, usually at 11 a.m. Moscow time. And also I want from at least one work days from Monday to Friday to have a walk and talk videos for evening, right? There will be big, longer versions on my Patreon and Boosty pages, and the shorter versions I will publish on YouTube and Rumble as advertising, so that maybe more members of our bigger community will consider to join, to support my work while subscribing to my Patreon and Boosty pages. Let's see. There is some plans. Hopefully it will work out. Nidish Kumar is asking, Levan, are they integrating AL51 engines in the Su-57? I think that's one of our main requirements to procure. I think if you are talking about building Su-57s in India, I think what will happen is that Russia will transfer engine manufacturing technology too. I think India will demand Russia to not just transfer parts so that these planes will be assembled in India, but at least 50% of the plane, based on Indian laws, by the way, 50% of military equipment that Indian militaries buy have to be built in India, right? And maybe New Delhi will ask Moscow to transfer engine manufacturing capabilities, technologies. And you know what? Let's do it, man. Let's do it. I mean, why not? You know, Russia didn't transfer technology for engine building to China, and that's why on early J-20s, there was Russian engines on it, right? China bought Russian Su-35s, several dozen of them. They took engines from those Su-35s and used them for J-20s, right? Chinese fifth-gen fighter jet. That was their early production planes, right? Nowadays, I believe China is using its domestic engines. Could be a copy of Russian engines, of course, but according to experts that I see, Chinese engines still are nowhere near in terms of reliability with the Russian engines or British engines, for example, or American engines. But nevertheless, they are moving forward with technology, and you know what? I think if India will begin producing Su-57s with their Su-57s under the Russian license, probably they will require a technology transfer to build engines in India. And maybe Moscow will say, okay, it's a unique, obviously it's a unique technology, by the way. Very few countries in this world have such technology, and you know, due to high level of relationships between Moscow and New Delhi, this might happen. Although I don't know, man. Engines are very tricky stuff, man. Engines are very tricky stuff. I don't know. I don't know what is going to happen. So let's see. But any level of cooperation between Russia and India is a great deal, man. Alexander G is commenting Su-35s and their Su-57s are bombers with their fighter jet maneuverability. Yes, these are multi-role planes, isn't it? All multi-role planes basically are bombers with the fighter jet capabilities, Su-35, Su-30, Su-57. Eurofighters are the same, also multi-role planes. Rafale is the same. Saab, Gripen is the same. If it comes to US, F-16s, FA-18s, F-15s, latest generation F-15s also are multi-role. In early F-15s were, of course, fighters originally, but next generations, being adapted for ground attack operations too. And latest F-15s are extremely capable planes, by the way. I mean, F-15s definitely are legendary planes. When it comes to US aviation, I will say most impressive plane ever built is F-14 Tomcat, in my personal opinion. US have not built anything similar in terms of breakthrough in fighter jet technology. F-22 is good, but I don't think it's like any sort of a breakthrough in anything. Okay, it's like loosely visible on shortwave radars, but it's very well visible on a long wave radars. So therefore, this stealth technology is overrated big time. But F-14 was a beast, man. Extraordinary plane for its time. And wonderful, good-looking plane, by the way. It's a beast. But yes, F-15 also legendary plane, of course. Latest generations of F-15s are no any less capable than F-22s, believe it or not. Maybe even more capable, actually. Right? So all these planes, all these multi-role planes are, can be called the bombers or strike planes with their fighter jet maneuverability. Although Russian ones, Su-35, Su-57, its maneuverability is on a whole new level, isn't it? Because of nozzles, engine nozzles, they can move around in 360, right? And no plane can do that. F-22s have like vertical movement when it comes to engine nozzles, but Russian planes have this 360 movement. Boosty. Oh, okay, there was a boosty, by the way. MRX, Mr. X, thank you very much for your donation on a boosty. Let me highlight, dear friends. There was a donation right now on a boosty, dear friends, of 1,500 rubles, which is $20. So let me highlight this. So once again, thank you very much, Mr. X, for your support and attention, and 1,500 ruble donation on a boosty, which is $20 on the current rate. Thank you very much. And we reach 85, right? Out of 200, that was the task of today's. Okay. And in the chat, Mr. X commented that I hope it helps. It does. It does. All support, all donations do help, dear friends, to maintain this project, to stay focused, basically, full time on this project. It's not always easy because, it's just not, without going into details. But yes, I'm trying to produce interesting, useful content. And many members of community find my work useful and interesting, and I'm getting support from you, dear community, and I'm truly grateful, and I'm blessed to be in this field. I don't take nothing for granted, and I understand perfectly well how blessed I am to be in this field, to start this late, right? As I did like 3 years ago, and to still be here. All thanks to your support, dear friends. So truly grateful. I mean, I have no words to explain how grateful I am. So thank you very much. Thank you. It's a unique opportunity, by the way. I grew up in journalism, right? Since 17 years, I started working in a field of journalism even before I went to university on journalism faculty, and you can imagine how happy I am that I get this opportunity to work now as a citizen journalist, right, in this old age. I mean, almost 50 now. So, it's. Thank you very much, dear friends. And hopefully, I'm doing a good job, man. Hopefully, I'm trying to improve my language, my delivery, and I'm trying to build news updates in a way that all the news are interesting. And so, dear friends, we are almost. If I did not stop now, we will go for another record. And the family members are kind of tired because I'm taking whole room here, and maybe I will end the live stream now. Thank you all, dear friends, for your attention and support. I'm quite sure I did miss a couple of questions, but I tried my best to be informative, and we had a good conversation, isn't it? We had a good conversation. For next Sunday, for next community chat, I'm gonna make very short news segment. I'm gonna try to keep news segment under the hour, so that we will have more time to exchange opinions and discuss different topics. That will be better way to go, I think. But anyways, hopefully today's news segment was also informative and interesting, and hopefully you liked it. So thank you very much, dear friends, for your attention, for your support. Truly grateful. Have a wonderful day, and take care. See you tomorrow.